Chapter 1464. Lin Yuan looked at Gu Xingyin with a complacent smile, as if he had already guessed something. He couldn't help but laugh as well. Holding her tightly in his arms, he sighed, "I've been waiting for you for a long time, and I've finally heard your words." Gu Xingyin leaned against his chest and could clearly hear his powerful and rapid heartbeat. It was for her. She had some bad thoughts and said, "I've been waiting for a long time. How old was I at that time? I didn't expect you to be such a person." Hearing the hidden laughter in her words, Lin Yuan didn't expose her. He replied very seriously, "In fact, Tianyi, from the night you summoned me 10 years ago, you were destined to only belong to me in this life." His heart was very small, and could only accommodate one person. Moreover, that person could only belong to her. From Gu Xingyin's summoned magical beasts, it could be seen that they were all docile and cute female beasts, and there wasn't even a single male beast. Moreover, even if it was a female beast, he wouldn't allow Gu Xingyin to be too close to them. This man was even jealous of magical beasts. When Gu Xingyin heard his swear-like words, she was stunned for a moment, and then the smile on her face disappeared. She looked at Lin Yuan seriously and said, "What a coincidence. Actually, when I first saw you 10 years ago, I felt that such a beautiful and powerful man must belong to me." Lin Yuan's eyes trembled for a moment, and the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up. "Well, when your matters are over, let's conclude a companion contract, right?" A companion contract. With the soul as an oath, the two people who became companions would share everything about their companions, including their lifespan, cultivation, status. This kind of ancient contract had long been lost in the current magical beast continent. Unexpectedly, this man still remembered it. Gu Xingyin looked at the smile on his face and pretended not to hear the disorderly heartbeat in his ears. "All right." She thought for a moment and suddenly remembered something. So she said to Lin Yuan, "Close your eyes." Lin Yuan didn't quite understand what she was going to do, but he still obediently closed his eyes. Gu Xingyin stretched out her right hand. A bright green light shone from her hand, and then, "Open your eyes." Lin Yuan opened his eyes but was stunned. A sky full of red petals fell down, fluttering about as if there was no end, drowning the two of them in this wave of fire. In front of him was a bouquet of red flowers in full bloom. This flower, Lin Yuan suddenly remembered that 10 years ago, Tianyi seemed to have given him a similar flower. It seemed to be called rose. Gu Xingyin handed the flower to him and said with a smile, "In a faraway place, people there use this kind of red rose to symbolize warm and beautiful love. This kind of flower is also used during courtship. I'm giving him to you now, Lin Yuan. 99 red roses symbolize everlasting love." She smiled like a flower. "Are you willing to accept it?" Lin Yuan stretched out his hand and embraced Gu Xingyin into his arms with the flower. The rain of flowers still didn't stop, and soon the ground was covered with a thick layer of red petals. The two people, one in red and one in blue, quietly embraced each other in this fiery world. It seemed to be as Gu Xingyin said, eternal and unchanging. Chapter 1465. After some time, Gu Xingyin and Lin Yuan left the Nine Hells Purgatory and began to set foot on the magical beast continent that they hadn't been to for 10 years. The Summoner Conference had been going on for a long time. Those summoners without any background naturally needed to start from the lowest level of competition and go up one round at a time. However, it was different for the summoners from the big families and forces. They could directly skip the beginning of the competition and directly enter the last few rounds of the assessment. Regarding this, whether it was those summoners without background or those with background, they had no objections. The reason was that from the beginning of the competition, the number of people who advanced in each round was determined. Those civilian summoners had a lot less innate advantages compared to those summoners with the support of big families' resources. And if there were no summoners from big families participating, the number of people who advanced could also be increased. And for those summoners with powerful backgrounds, the early rounds of the competition weren't difficult. It was nothing more than a waste of time to increase their exposure. So everyone tacitly agreed with this rule. Only a small number of people might have different ideas. For example, this time, the most popular winner was the eldest son of the Yuan family, Yuan Tianqin. This person started from the first round of the preliminary test and went up one round at a time. What he wanted was not only first place, but also fame throughout the continent. So he had to participate in every round. Not only did he have to participate, but he had to win. Not only did he have to win, but he had to win beautifully. He had to win shock. But Yuan Tianqin's so-called shock method was a bit excessive. Every summoner who fought against Yuan Tianqin was almost beaten half to death. None of the summoners who were defeated by him came out unscathed. The lighter ones vomited blood, the heavier ones were even crippled on the spot, and even their summoned beasts were bitten to death by Yuan Tianqin's purple-winged thunder dragon. So along with Yuan Tianqin's reputation as a genius, there was also his tyranny, but even so, there were still countless young summoners who worshipped this man and even set him as their goal. As for the summoners you mentioned who were defeated and crippled by his hands, their skills were inferior, who could they blame? When Gu Xingyin sat in the tea-house and heard such remarks, she simply laughed in her heart. Just because you're strong and you've won, you can easily destroy the decades of hard work of others. Those people who said such things had never faced Yuan Tianqin before, right? Gu Xingyin recalled the cold and merciless gaze of that young man 10 years ago, and her heart trembled. Yuan Tianqin was still the same. But since that was the case, Gu Xingyin smiled. She was best at giving others a taste of their own medicine. After putting the money on the table, Gu Xingyin got up and walked out. Soon, she arrived at the competition venue of the Summoner Conference. Of course, it was the venue for the finals. Gu Xingyin looked at the jade slip in her hand. There was a bright red number, 27, on it. Of course, she was the kind with a background. When the contestants from 9 Hell's Purgatory, Lin Yuan personally went to the organizer to ask for a spot, the expressions of those old fellows became more and more interesting. Even someone from 9 Hell's Purgatory came, and it was Lin Yuan who personally came to ask for a spot. An old man in a white robe looked a little serious with a hint of expectation. I'm afraid that the Summoner Conference this time will be more exciting than we imagined. Lin Li exclaimed. 8:00 clock ended. Look at my sincere little eyes. Please vote 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 vote. I'll dance in circles for you to see good night. Chapter 1466. There wasn't much difference between the rules of the finals and the preliminaries. It was still a one-on-one competition. The winner would advance to the next round. If there was a difference, it was probably that the strength of the opponents increased with each round. Gu Xingyin attracted a lot of attention when she first went on stage. After all, the prefix of her name was 9 Hell's Purgatory. Everyone had heard of 9 Hell's Purgatory, but they had never heard of a summoner appearing there, so everyone was very curious. However, Gu Xingyin's performance had always been very normal. She had only summoned a level 9 magical beast, Flaming Skylark. Although it was also very powerful, it was still somewhat lacking compared to Yuan Tianqin and the others' amazing strength. Many people looked at Gu Xingyin and shook their heads, saying that this contestant from 9 Hell's Purgatory was still too young compared to the others. In other words, they didn't think highly of her. However, Gu Xingyin didn't care. She naturally had her reasons for doing so. Yuan Tianqin also paid attention to Gu Xingyin. When he heard that the other party was from 9 Hell's Purgatory, his expression instantly turned cold. The hatred of having his tongue cut off 10 years ago was still in his heart. As long as there was a chance, he would never let go of a chance to take revenge. Yuan Tianqin naturally also hated in her heart. Yuan Tianqin only lost a tongue, but she, her entire person, had lost the rules to become a summoner. No one knew how much effort she had put in to be able to stay in the Yuan family, and no one knew how much effort she had put in to stay by Yuan Tianqin's side and become his most trusted subordinate. But that wasn't important anymore. She stayed by Yuan Tianqin's side, and the two of them had the same goal, to take revenge one day. To take revenge on the ruler of 9 Hells Purgatory, the Lord of the Abyss, and Yuan Tianyi who had caused them to become like this. However, the funny thing was that the two of them were gnashing their teeth in hatred, but when they saw Gu Xingyin, they didn't recognize her. Originally, Yuan Tianyi didn't have a good life in the Yuan family. When she was 10 years old, she was the same as other children when they were 7 or 8 years old. Skinny, small, pale, and her delicate face was lowered all year round. She didn't attract any attention. However, things were different in 9 Hells Purgatory. Lin Yuan almost treated Gu Xingyin as a treasure in the palm of his hand. In the vast 9 Hells Purgatory, there were countless treasures. Those heavenly and earthly treasures with mild medicinal properties that outsiders coveted were all given to Gu Xingyin as snacks by Lin Yuan. After 10 years, Gu Xingyin and Yuan Tianyi as a child, whether in appearance or temperament, were like two different people. She also used a fake name to participate in the competition, Gu Yuan. It would be strange if those two could still recognize her. However, even if he didn't recognize that Gu Xingyin was Yuan Tianyi, who they had hated for 10 years, Yuan Tianqin didn't plan to let her go when he heard that she was from 9 Hells Purgatory. Since he couldn't take revenge on Yuan Tianyi and the Lord of the Abyss, he could vent his anger on those who were related to them. Wasn't he afraid of being held accountable for the competition? When he was nervous, he didn't know how to control his strength. If something went wrong, he wouldn't be able to control it, right? No matter how strong you are, the Lord of the Abyss can't be unreasonable, right? However, Yuan Tianqin, who had a good plan in his heart, did not expect that Gu Xingyin, who was already a cripple in his eyes, had the same idea in his heart. Chapter 1467. Although the two sides hadn't met yet, they had been secretly looking forward to it for a long time. Finally, Gu Xingyin heard the voice she had been waiting for a long time. Next match, number 27 Gu Yuan versus number 38 Yuan Tianqin. Gu Xingyin calmly walked into the arena. In order to avoid Yuan Tianqin's suspicion, Lin Yuan hadn't appeared in the arena. However, Gu Xingyin knew that person must be watching her from somewhere not far away. At this time, Yuan Tianqin also stood in the arena. Yuan Qin stood closest to the arena, so she could act as Yuan Tianqin's mouthpiece at any time. Gu Xingyin smiled, raised her hand, and saluted. I've long heard of the Yuan family's genius. Yuan Tianqin just looked at her coldly. Yuan Qin said, there's no need to salute people from the 9 Hells Purgatory. Let's start. The competition has no eyes, so it's better to be careful. Gu Xingyin didn't get angry, as if she didn't hear Yuan Qin's threat. She just smiled and said, thank you for your concern, but I might not be able to control my emotions during the competition. You have to be careful too. Yuan Tianqin sneered, feeling sad for this little girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He had seen her previous matches. Although she was indeed very strong, there was still a certain gap between her and him. Yuan Tianqin was almost certain that he could win this match. He glanced at Yuan Qin. Yuan Qin immediately said, since both sides admit that they might not be able to control their emotions during the competition, if something unexpected happens later, it's best that we don't blame each other. Yuan Qin's voice was very loud, so Gu Xingyin was sure that the judges and audience had heard it. She was still smiling as she nodded. When Yuan Tianqin turned around, a cold smile appeared on his lips. Gu Xingyin saw it. She was also laughing in her heart. You were waiting for this sentence, but how would you know that I was also waiting for you to say it? The competition officially began. Both sides summoned their beasts at the first moment. It was also a magical beast of the 9th rank. Yuan Tianqin's purple-winged thunder dragon was domineering and powerful, while the flame skylark behind Gu Xingyin was graceful. The situation was on the verge of breaking out. Actually, at their age, they were far from being able to fully control a magical beast of the 9th rank. But even if it was only a part of their strength, the power displayed by the two magical beasts of the 9th rank was still very impressive. Among the few matches today, this was the most interesting one. But was Gu Xingyin really unable to fully control a magical beast of the 9th rank? That was not the case. Summoners used their soul strength to determine their strength. In this aspect, there was probably no summoner in the entire continent of magical beasts that could compare to Gu Xingyin. She just liked to see her opponent pour a bucket of cold water over his head when he thought that victory was in his hands. Wasn't Yuan Tianqin arrogant? I'll let you enjoy yourself for a while. Later, she would tell him what true despair was. The two magical beasts in the field had already begun to fight. They were both magical beasts of the 9th rank that were famous for their attacks. Moreover, they were the natural enemies of birds and beasts on land. In addition, their respective masters hated each other. As soon as these two magical beasts started fighting, they didn't even try to test each other. They just put on a desperate posture. Gu Xingyin watched quietly. Ordinary people seemed to think that it was a tie, but in the eyes of people with discerning eyes, the flame skylark just looked intimidating. In fact, it was still slightly inferior to the purple-winged thunder dragon. Chapter 1468. The strength displayed by the raging flame skylark was indeed slightly inferior to the purple-winged thunder dragon. Even a few moments of carelessness caused her gorgeous feathers to be scratched off by the other party's claws. Yuan Tianqin's lips curled into a smile. He closed his eyes, and his mind moved slightly, as if issuing some order. At this moment, the purple-winged thunder dragon suddenly opened its mouth, and a huge purple lightning bolt struck towards the raging flame skylark. This lightning bolt was obviously menacing, and the raging flame skylark hurriedly dodged backwards. According to the normal development, this purple-winged thunder dragon should take advantage of the victory to pursue and attack, taking advantage of the raging flame skylark's flustered state to give a head-on blow. In this way, the outcome of this competition could basically be determined. But the purple-winged thunder dragon didn't do so. What Yuan Tianqin wanted was not just such a victory. The purple-winged thunder dragon's huge body suddenly turned in one direction, heading towards Gu Xingyin, who was looking worriedly at the raging flame skylark. A bolt of lightning comparable to the attack just now shot out from its mouth, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Gu Xingyin. Such a powerful attack, even a 9th-rank magical beast like the raging flame skylark with super strong defense, didn't dare to meet it head-on. If the summoner's weak body faced it, many people had quietly turned their heads away, unable to bear to see the next scene. Yuan Tianqin, on the other hand, stared unblinkingly in the direction of Gu Xingyin, and even a trace of excitement mixed with expectation appeared in his eyes. That bolt of lightning, without any accident, fell straight on top of Gu Xingyin's head. However, the scene of blood splattering out that everyone imagined did not appear. A soft silver-white halo appeared beside Gu Xingyin, blocking this fatal blow for her. When the light dissipated, a beautiful and elegant figure appeared beside Gu Xingyin. She had a graceful posture, beautiful hair, and gentle eyes as she quietly looked at the field. The most eye-catching thing was the huge jade-colored horn on her head. Unicorn. Some of the spectators had already recognized the species of this magical beast. At the front of the judging panel, the sharp-eyed judges immediately recognized that it was not only a unicorn, but also the king of unicorns, the moonlight unicorn. What's going on? Why would a saint beast suddenly appear here? While the judge was speaking, his fiery gaze was still fixed on the unicorn in the middle of the field. That was a saint beast. It was a saint-level magical beast that many high-level summoners yearned for, but never got to see in their entire lives. Only Yuan Tianqin didn't look good. Just now, he had almost succeeded. "Referee, is this considered cheating?" Yuan Qin said coldly to the referee at the side. When summoners competed, they could only fight with their summoned beasts. Gu Xingyin's summoned beast was obviously the fiery skylark. Even if she summoned a sacred beast, it would not change the fact that she had broken the rules. The referee was stunned for a moment, then he turned around and looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. "I announce that because one of the contestants has broken the rules, wait a minute." Gu Xingyin suddenly shouted. All eyes fell on her from all directions. Gu Xingyin slightly raised the corner of her lips and smiled arrogantly. "Who said I cheated? Who set the rule that a summoner can only have one summoned beast?" Chapter 1469. She raised her palm high up in the air. Everyone could clearly see that a mysterious array was shining in the center of her right palm. At the same time, the same array appeared on the forehead of the Moonlight Unicorn. In other words, this Moonlight Unicorn holy beast was really summoned by her. The crowd was in an uproar. A summoner could only summon one magical beast. This was a law that had been around for thousands of years. And now, this law had been broken. Everyone in the audience was looking at Gu Xingyin and the unicorn beside her. For a moment, no one cared about the outcome of this match. Yuan Tianqin looked at this scene with an ashen face. When he saw Gu Xingyin's right hand light up, he knew that no matter what, he had already lost in some aspects of this match. At this moment, Gu Xingyin raised her head and smiled at him. That laughter contained undisguised mockery and complacency, clearly mocking his previous thoughts. An unknown anger surged in his heart. Outside the arena, Yuan Qin looked at the referee and asked, "Referee, the match hasn't ended yet. Please continue with your ruling." The referee was stunned for a moment. He clearly didn't expect Yuan Tianqin's side to take the initiative to request to continue the match. After all, in his mind, Gu Xingyin had one more summoned beast. Moreover, it was a holy beast, so the outcome was obvious. Yuan Tianqin also thought about it for a moment. Although the Moonlight Unicorn holy beast was powerful, it wasn't focused on attacking. It was more focused on speed and bringing good luck. In other words, it didn't have much attacking power. In that case, he didn't necessarily have no chance of winning. At this moment, Gu Xingyin spoke again, "Young Master Yuan, are you sure we want to continue?" She pointed at the Moonlight Unicorn beside her and the flaming skylark behind her. She smiled proudly, "If we continue, we won't be fighting one-on-one anymore." She purposely emphasized the words, "one-on-one," as if to emphasize something. Yuan Tianqin looked at her proud expression and tone and felt displeased. He simply ignored Gu Xingyin. Yuan Qin directly said to the referee, "Can we continue?" When the referee saw that neither of them had any intention of stopping, he could only announce the continuation of the match. At this time, the atmosphere in the field had reached its climax. Everyone was excitedly watching the 2-versus-1 battle in the field. There was even a legendary sacred beast participating in the battle. There were even spectators from other competition venues who rushed over after hearing the news. For a moment, there was a sea of people. Everyone's focus was on Gu Xingyin. Even the judges were sighing. No wonder they felt that something was wrong. The 9 Hells Purgatory had never produced a disciple before. It was impossible for them to produce a disciple this time. She was just an ordinary genius. So the surprise was waiting for him here. In the field, Gu Xingyin didn't rush to make a move. Instead, she said to Yuan Tianqin seriously, "If you really want to compete again, I won't hold back anymore." Yuan Tianqin's response was that the purple-winged thunder dragon behind him soared up, and purple lightning shot towards them. Gu Xingyin clicked her tongue and shook her head, "I already said not to be impulsive. When I get serious, even I am afraid of myself." She stretched out her right hand again. After the Moonlight Unicorn Holy Beast blocked the purple-winged Thunder Dragon's attack, everyone's eyes fell on Gu Xingyin. What was she going to do? Chapter 1470. Soon they knew what Gu Xingyin was going to do. This was because as the white lights lit up one after another, 3 figures appeared consecutively in the field. The people in the audience were stunned. Even the judges were so shocked by this scene that they were speechless. 9 nether soul-devouring beast, red flame beast, and blue-eyed golden-eyed beast. 3 holy beasts appeared in the field. Many people felt that there might be something wrong with their eyes. But it was fine if there was something wrong with their eyes, but could it be that there was something wrong with everyone's eyes? This, really, living in the legends, the magical beasts that ordinary people had only seen in ancient records in their lifetime, now all appeared in front of them. Most of them turned to look at Gu Xingyin in shock. Who was this girl who could summon so many high-level and even saint-level magical beasts? No wonder, with such strength, no wonder the 9 nether purgatory let her out. Not to mention that she summoned a bunch of saint-level magical beasts. Even if she summoned a bunch of low-level magical beasts, with the number, she could kill a lot of people. Gu Xingyin kept looking at Yuan Tianqin. The moment Yuan Tianqin saw these 3 magical beasts, his face became strange. He seemed to open his mouth, but how could Gu Xingyin give him a chance to admit defeat? She moved her divine soul, and the blue-eyed golden-eyed beast, which was as huge as a hill, roared. Only its roar could be heard in the whole field, and some people with weaker physiques were even directly shaken to the point that their faces turned pale. The judge naturally couldn't hear any other sound. At this moment, except for the Moonlight Unicorn, which had been quietly guarding Gu Xingyin, the other 4 top magical beasts directly used 4 killing moves in the direction of the purple-winged Thunder Dragon and Yuan Tianqin. The dust settled. Yuan Qin, who was standing outside the field, looked pale. She and Yuan Tianqin were connected mentally, and at this moment, she could feel that the connection between them was so weak that it almost didn't exist. What did this mean? It meant that Yuan Tianqin was now in a very bad state, and might even die at any time. Everyone was still in a state of shock. Seeing this scene, they didn't even react. It was Gu Xingyin who reminded the referee who looked like he was sleepwalking. She seemed to be a little uneasy. Referee, I already said that if I use my full strength, I won't be able to control them. After all, my soul force is limited. There are so many big fellows, and they won't listen to my orders. All the demonic beasts, yes, master's acting skills were superb. Since their master had said so, these magical beasts naturally had to give face. Their eyes were cold and arrogant, as if they didn't put anyone in their eyes. At this moment, Gu Xingyin spoke up again, that, the eldest son of the Zhen family, she pointed at a crater that had been smashed into the ground. You are lying. At this time, a sharp voice came from outside the arena. It was Yuan Qin, who had a crazy look on her face. She stared at Gu Xingyin and said, "Stop pretending. You're obviously trying to kill young Master Shao on purpose." Gu Xingyin had an innocent look on her face. She looked at Yuan Qin with a look of understanding. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let the rescue team come in first. She said very understandingly. However, the rescue team stood outside the arena and looked at the 5 domineering magical beasts in the arena. They didn't dare to come in at all. This contestant herself said that she might not be able to control these magical beasts. What if they went in and encountered these magical beasts that were fierce? Chapter 1471. Therefore, the rescue workers all looked at the referee for help. The referee expressed that he was also quite helpless when he looked at those ferocious big guys just now. In the end, the referee and the rescue workers could only look at Gu Xingyin for help. Their thoughts and their hearts were like this: since this situation was caused by you, of course, you should be responsible for it. Under their burning gazes, Gu Xingyin could only, laboriously, recite a very tedious incantation, and then finally let these big guys of the magical beast world go back. Without the shocking pressure in the field, the rescue workers finally remembered their work and went to the field. But when they saw Yuan Tianqin, who was still at the bottom of the pit, they all gasped. This was just too tragic. When the rescue workers went forward, they couldn't help but reach out to check Yuan Tianqin's breath. To be honest, it was already a miracle that he was still alive. The representative of the Yuan family who came with Yuan Tianqin couldn't help but angrily complain, saying that Gu Xingyin had the intention to kill. In the face of the Yuan family's complaint, Gu Xingyin's face turned pale, and then she seemed to be very uncomfortable and directly fainted. A figure in red appeared beside her and held her firmly in his arms. Feeling the power in Gu Xingyin's body, Lin Yuan said to the referee indifferently, she overexerted herself and fainted because her body couldn't support it. After saying that, he didn't waste any more time and said, I'll take her back to rest. Then he disappeared. Referee, he could only announce that Gu Yuan from the Nine Hells Purgatory won this game. As soon as she returned to her courtyard, Gu Xingyin woke up. Lin Yuan couldn't help but laugh, you are really too bad. Gu Xingyin said innocently, I just don't want to face the Yuan family's unreasonable people. She knew very well what kind of moral conduct the Yuan family had. They had always only allowed others to do what they were allowed to do, and that was wrong. If she couldn't defeat Yuan Tianqin this time, she would either die or be disabled. If that was the case, the Zhen family would definitely say that the atmosphere on the stage was tense, and it was normal for them to be unable to hold back, or something along those lines. But if things turned out like this, and the person who fell was Yuan Tianqin, they would immediately change their attitude. All in all, they were pushing all the blame onto Gu Xingyin. Everything was the fault of the person who hurt her. Gu Xingyin, Did he really think everyone was a fool? In the Zhen family's courtyard, several doctors surrounded the bed to check on Yuan Tianqin's condition. Not far away, the person in charge of the Yuan family's trip and some disciples were guarding the side. Seeing a doctor come out, the person in charge of the Yuan family, who had been anxious all this time, hurried forward and asked, how is our first young master? Hearing this, the doctor could only sigh. When the middle-aged man from the Yuan family saw this, his heart sank. The doctor continued, with such injuries, it's already a miracle that first young master is still alive. But now, even if he can wake up, I'm afraid he can only spend the rest of his life in bed. In other words, Yuan Tianqin was crippled. Then, can first young master still be a summoner? The middle-aged man held on to the last glimmer of hope. It didn't matter if he couldn't move, the key was his talent. Chapter 1472. When the doctor heard this, he still shook his head. This time, not only was the eldest young master's body damaged, but his soul was also seriously injured, so, there was a strong sense of regret in the doctor's words. After all, the eldest young master of the Yuan family was absolutely amazing in terms of talent. Who would have thought that a summoner convention would cause him to suffer such an unexpected disaster? The middle-aged man felt as if he was struck by lightning. It's over, it's over. This was the only thought in his mind at the moment. In order to compete for the position of the leader of the team this time, he had spent a lot of energy and means. Because this time, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the eldest young master had a high chance of winning first place. Since that was the case, as the leader of the team, he would definitely be praised by the family. But who would have thought that something like this would happen halfway through? The middle-aged man felt that he was simply too unlucky. The most talented eldest young master in the family had become like this, and as the leader of the team, he actually didn't stop the other party from killing him. This was his fault in itself. But in that situation, the middle-aged man thought of the 5 magical beasts surrounding the girl and shuddered. In that case, even if he had rushed over, he was afraid that at most, there would be one more person lying on the bed. He was so irritated in his heart that when he sent the doctor away, he stuffed a large amount of red packets. Those doctors also knew what he meant, and they all said that they would never leak the news. The middle-aged man was right. Yuan Tianqin wasn't the only one from the younger generation of the Yuan family participating in the summoner convention this time. Although there were a few who weren't as good as Yuan Tianqin, they were still rare geniuses. If those people could achieve good results, when he returned to the family, his life would be better. Therefore, he had to hide the fact that Yuan Tianqin was crippled, including the Yuan family. Except for his own few talents, he had to hide the rest of the Yuan family members who came with him. Especially the other younger generation of the Yuan family, he absolutely couldn't let them know, so as not to affect their performance in the future. But things often didn't go as planned. The middle-aged man hadn't even thought of how to announce the eldest young master's injury to the outside world yet, but rumors had already spread. They said that Yuan Tianqin was dead, that Yuan Tianqin was crippled, and that the Yuan family was probably done for this time, and that they would never be able to stand up again. There were all kinds of words. What depressed the middle-aged man the most was that the Yuan clan's old ancestor, who was in seclusion, had heard the news from somewhere and rushed over personally. The middle-aged man was so scared that he didn't even dare to breathe. However, Yuan family's old ancestor wasn't in the mood to take it to heart. After he personally went to see Yuan Tianqin, his face was so gloomy that it could drip water. "Tell me in detail, what exactly is going on?" The Yuan family's ancestor's expression was extremely ugly. The middle-aged man carefully recounted the entire process of the competition, not leaving out even the slightest detail. Even though he already knew the gist of the situation, the Yuan family's old ancestor was still infuriated when he heard the entire story from the middle-aged man. What a waterside lord, what a Yuan Tianyi! How merciless! The Yuan family's old ancestor snorted coldly as the solid wooden armrest he was holding on to shattered into powder. The middle-aged man lowered his head deeply. Yuan Tianyi. Chapter 1473. The middle-aged man was the son of the law enforcement elder and a direct descendant of the Yuan family. He knew a little about what happened that year. He had heard the name of the third Miss, Yuan Tianyi, from his father. Not only that, he had also heard a secret from his father. It was a secret that he had never heard of before. The third Miss, Yuan Tianyi, had awakened the bloodline of an ancient summoner. The law enforcement elder hadn't told him anything else. He vaguely remembered that he was shocked back then. But later, the third Miss, Yuan Tianyi, had mysteriously disappeared from the Yuan family, and he had gradually forgotten the name. Now, hearing the old ancestor's tone, and thinking of how the girl named Gu Yuan had summoned the 5 magical beasts with a wave of her hand, the middle-aged man silently suppressed the shock in his heart. Until the old ancestor left. He couldn't help but gasp. Could it be that Gu Yuan was the third Miss, Yuan Tianyi? The Yuan family disciples present had been ordered not to spread what had happened in the Yuan family's cultivation hall. They didn't know what exactly had happened, but they had tried to find out some information. It was said that the third Miss and the eldest young master had a conflict. At that time, the Yuan family of course chose the eldest young master and gave up on the third Miss. No one felt that this choice was wrong. After all, in their eyes, the eldest young master was the future of the Yuan family, and the third Miss, Yuan Tianyi, was just a dispensable existence. But now, the middle-aged man remembered yesterday's red dress fluttering in the wind, and the giant magical beasts circling her with a wave of her hand. Then he remembered the eldest young master who was still lying unconscious on the bed. He sighed, thinking that the family's decision back then was really wrong. The girl's name was Gu Yuan, not Yuan Tianyi, and she didn't show any mercy when facing the eldest young master. It was obvious that the third Miss no longer had any feelings for the Yuan family. The middle-aged man shook his head. No matter what, the original decision had been made, and now there was an irreconcilable conflict between the third miss and the Yuan family. It was the old ancestor and the family head who should think about what to do. It was better for him to be an honest person who didn't know anything. The old ancestor of the Yuan family went directly to the place where Lin Yuan and Gu Xingyin were staying. But they refused to see him. Go and tell the person that we're very busy and we're not familiar with each other. There's nothing to see, Gu Xingyin said slowly to the person who came to report. That person was a housekeeper that they had conveniently bought when they bought this courtyard. As an ordinary person, he didn't even know what the Yuan clan's old ancestor represented, so it was only natural for him to reject the offer. The Yuan family's old ancestor's face turned ashen. He didn't enter the door directly but had someone announce his arrival. This was already giving the host a lot of face. The old ancestor of the Yuan family thought that he had already lowered his stance, but he didn't expect the other party to be so arrogant. Since that was the case, the meeting he had prepared was meaningless. Seeing that the face of the ordinary person in front of him had turned pale because of his aura, the old ancestor of the Yuan clan harumphed coldly and turned around to leave. He wasn't so low as to make things difficult for an ordinary person. But Abyssal Lord, and that Yuan Tianyi who had no respect for her family, the Yuan family's old ancestor narrowed his eyes. He would make them pay. Gu Xingyin didn't need to guess to know what the Yuan family's old ancestor was thinking. These villains' cannon fodder always had these thoughts running through their minds. Chapter 1474. To be honest, Gu Xingyin wasn't afraid of the Yuan family at all. Although the Yuan family was powerful, they only had one peak saint expert, their forefather. He wasn't Lin Yuan's match at all. That aside, Gu Xingyin herself had been in the Nine Hells Purgatory for a long time. She had lived in the Nine Hells Purgatory for 10 years, and because her aura was extremely similar to that of the goddess of nature, she had attracted the attention of many magical beasts. Quite a few of them had been tricked by her for food, such as the moonlight unicorn. Gu Xingyin could create any plant she'd ever seen before. As someone who'd once become the goddess of nature, no one knew the plants of this world better than her. Thus, she could easily find out which tasty fruits were most popular with magical beasts. Nine Hells Purgatory had always been a place lacking in plants. It was only after Gu Xingyin's arrival that it slowly transformed into an otherworldly paradise. Other things aside, Gu Xingyin had already contracted many saint-level magical beasts. If she summoned any of them, the Yuan family's forefather wouldn't be able to deal with them in a short time. That was the source of her confidence. The Yuan family couldn't do anything to her. If you ask me, if the Yuan family doesn't have eyes, I'll find a time to. A cold glint flashed through Lin Yuan's eyes. The ruler of Nine Hells Purgatory had never been a kind person. If he were, he wouldn't have been able to control those disobedient magical beasts. Bystanders saw his gentleness, but they didn't know that it was only because Gu Xingyin was standing in front of him. Gu Xingyin looked at him helplessly. Don't talk about exterminating people at the drop of a hat. To be honest, I don't have any deep grudges with the Yuan family. Those who did have grudges with me, Yuan Tianqin and Yuan Qin, have both been crippled. If the Yuan family stops now, there's no need for us to push our luck. After all, most of the Yuan family hadn't even heard of her name, much less had any grudges against her. Lin Yuan. Playing with her fair and soft fingers. Lazily, he said, "You're always so soft-hearted. You're like this to these humans, and you're also like this to those magical beasts." Therefore, those magical beasts loved to play with Gu Xingyin, and even rubbed against her body one by one. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan felt very unhappy. What if they don't stop? Gu Xingyin smiled, but the smile was cold no matter how one looked at it. They don't know what's good for them. Of course, we don't have to show mercy. It was true that she wasn't bloodthirsty, but that didn't mean that she wouldn't fight back when she was bullied. Hopefully, the Zhen family would be aware of this. Ever since the fight with Yuan Tianqin, Gu Yuan's name had become famous. All the contestants were secretly praying that they wouldn't have to face her. What a joke! If he were to go up against another participant, he might still stand a chance. Even if he were to lose, he would at least be able to make it look good. If he were to face this person, if a few saint beasts unleashed their ultimate attacks, who would be able to block them? If they didn't believe it, it was said that the eldest son of the Yuan family was still lying in bed. And according to the news, the eldest son could only lie in bed for the rest of his life. Therefore, every time Gu Xingyin went up on the stage, before she could summon her opponent would show an ugly face and admit defeat. Since they were going to lose anyway, they might as well save their strength to deal with other opponents. This was what everyone thought. Therefore, Gu Xingyin went all the way to the end without any hindrance. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this scene, but no one blamed those who gave up. Chapter 1475. After all, he would only lose face if he admitted defeat. However, if he continued to fight, he would lose his life. Yuan Qin did not look too good. He was from a collateral branch of the Yuan family. He was accepted into the main family because he was talented. However, while his talent was good in other places, it wasn't that outstanding in the Yuan clan, where geniuses were as common as clouds. There were many people like him who could enjoy treatment that others could not. However, he did not have a strong presence in the Yuan family. When he found out that his opponent was Gu Yuan, who had defeated the eldest young master, Yuan Qin roared in his heart. He was prepared to admit defeat. He was not stupid. Even the eldest young master was no match for Gu Yuan. What was the point of him going up against him? Besides having another cannon fodder, it was meaningless. However, Yuan Qin did not expect that he would be summoned by the patriarch of the Yuan family. The patriarch was a legendary figure in their family. Yuan Qin went to see the patriarch excitedly. However, the patriarch only said one sentence and it made him feel cold. You are not allowed to admit defeat in the battle between you and Gu Yuan tomorrow. The patriarch did not care about the feelings of a collateral branch disciple. After he finished speaking, he asked his people to leave. Yuan Qin returned to his room in a daze. Soon, someone brought him a lot of treasures. The person in charge of delivering the treasures said enviously that the treasures were from the patriarch and asked him to perform well in the battle tomorrow. Perform well? A bitter smile appeared on Yuan Qin's face. What did it mean that he was not allowed to admit defeat against an opponent like Gu Yuan? Yuan Qin did not understand if the patriarch did not want him to admit defeat because he did not want to lose face, or if the patriarch wanted to use him to achieve something. He only knew that he might lose his life in the battle tomorrow. He sat on the chair in a daze. For the first time, he was dissatisfied with the cold Yuan family. Gu Xingyin also knew who her opponent was. Another member of the Yuan family? What a coincidence. Judging from the name, it should be a collateral branch disciple of the Yuan family. The battle was coming soon. There were many spectators for this battle. Some of them were even here for Gu Xingyin. They wanted to see what a summoner who could summon multiple magical beasts was like. Yuan Qin stood on the stage and looked at the girl opposite him. She was only in her 20s and was dressed in an extremely dazzling red robe. Her black hair was tied up high and her exquisite and bright face was indescribably flamboyant and unbridled. That's right. For someone like her, no matter how unbridled she was, it wouldn't be overboard. Gu Xingyin glanced at Yuan Qin. She did not know her. However, for someone to be able to reach this step, his strength would definitely not be weak. Both sides greeted each other according to the rules. The referee subconsciously waited for Yuan Qin to admit defeat. He was already used to it. Gu Yuan's matches were the most relaxed among all the matches that he had hosted. Because, there was no need to do anything at all. But soon, he heard the roar of a magical beast. The judge turned around and saw that it was the contestant from the Yuan family who had summoned his beast. Did he not intend to admit defeat? Gu Xingyin was clearly surprised as well. She raised her eyebrows and summoned the blazing skylark without hesitation. Given Yuan Qing's strength, the blazing skylark was enough. When Yuan Qing saw that Gu Xingyin had only summoned one magical beast, he did not feel that she was underestimating him. He knew himself very well. Chapter 1476. Yuan Qing knew that even if she only summoned a flaming skylark, he wouldn't be a match for her, judging from the previous battle between her and Yuan Tianqin. But at least, even if he lost, he would lose in a good way. If she directly summoned all her magical beasts, Yuan Qing was sure that he would follow in the footsteps of the first young master. In fact, when Gu Xingyin saw Yuan Qing choose to fight, she was also a little surprised. She didn't think that Yuan Qing would choose to not admit defeat just because she had injured Yuan Tianqin. In fact, the relationship between the same generation in the Yuan family wasn't as good as imagined. Not to mention, Yuan Tianqin was arrogant and couldn't let go of anyone who was more talented than him. So, she also kept an eye on him. The flaming skylark, a level 9 magical beast, was undoubtedly one of the most powerful. Yuan Qing's magical beasts couldn't hold on any longer. The flaming skylark raised its head and let out a long cry. The red flames covering the sky and the earth spread toward Yuan Qing and his magical beasts. This wasn't a killing move. In fact, as long as Yuan Qing opened his mouth, Gu Xingyin could immediately make the flaming skylark stop. But Yuan Qing gritted his teeth and didn't speak. He watched helplessly as the sea of fire was about to touch his body. "How dare you!" An angry roar sounded in everyone's ears like thunder. "The ancestor is here." Yuan Qing was delighted. "The ancestor will save me, right?" However, no one stopped the spread of the sea of fire. The next moment, a searing pain came from Yuan Qing's body. He forced himself to look in Gu Xingyin's direction. A huge black palm fell from the sky and fell straight toward her head. Yuan Qing was in despair. So this is what the ancestor is thinking. And he himself was the chess piece that had been abandoned, his consciousness was in a mess. On the other hand, Gu Xingyin smiled when he sensed the aura that seemed like it was going to destroy the world. She knew it. So this was what the Yuan family's ancestor was thinking. Was he going to get rid of her, a thorn in his side, at the risk of getting hurt? Unfortunately, before anyone could react, the huge black handprint had already landed on Gu Xingyin's head. Many people in the audience were shocked by this unexpected scene and stood up. Some of the judges even dared to step forward. A smile appeared on the face of the Yuan family's old ancestor. But the next moment, his smile froze on his face. Specks of white light appeared where Gu Xingyin was standing. When the giant black palm disappeared, everyone could clearly see Gu Xingyin's current appearance. She was still dressed in red, but she wasn't standing. Instead, she was sitting on a silver-white magic beast. It was the moonlight unicorn that had appeared before. At this moment, the moonlight unicorn's body was emitting a misty silver light, as if the moon had fallen on her body. There was a milky white halo that completely surrounded the moonlight unicorn and Gu Xingyin. Specks of light appeared around the man and the beast, and it was so beautiful that it seemed unreal. More importantly, under such an attack, Gu Xingyin was unharmed. How did she do it? At this moment, a judge's eyes suddenly lit up. He shouted, "It's the moonlight unicorn's innate ability, moonlight protection. Extreme defense that can ignore all attacks and last for 15 minutes. His face even turned red from excitement. This was a skill that only existed in ancient books. He was lucky enough to see it with his own eyes. Chapter 1477. Gu Xingyin frowned as she looked at her opponent. Yuan Qing had already fainted and his clothes were tattered by the flaming skylark's life spirit fire. The injuries on his body were a bit shocking. And this was under the condition that she had the flaming skylark stop attacking. Even so, Yuan Qing was still seriously injured. Gu Xingyin's heart was filled with disgust. She obviously didn't expect that in order to get rid of her, the Yuan family's ancestor would use his family's younger generation as bait. The most disgusting thing was that he clearly had the ability to save Yuan Qing, but he still chose to leave him in the lurch. How ruthless. She said faintly, "Referee, let's get someone to take a look at this person's injuries first." Only then did the referee come back to his senses. He quickly ordered people to carry Yuan Qing off the stage. At this time, someone from the Yuan family was not convinced and the person in charge directly scolded Gu Xingyin for being vicious. Gu Xingyin's face was cold. "I haven't even said anything yet and you're already slandering me." She looked up at the referee and said aloud, "I want to complain that the Yuan family didn't follow the rules." She pointed at the place where she had been standing and sneered, "As the ancestor of the Yuan family, a mighty saint-level expert, a renowned figure in the entire continent of magical beasts, you actually shamelessly launched a sneak attack on a junior like me while I was fighting. If this gets out, people will laugh their heads off." Shameless, she really dared to say it. Even the judges were amazed by her boldness. But thinking about it, this was a summoner who had several saint-level magical beasts, she really didn't have anything to be afraid of. The Yuan family's person in charge's face was red. His family's ancestor was being scolded in public. As a member of the Yuan family, he naturally didn't have any face. In fact, how could he not see through his ancestor's thoughts from the scene just now? But what could he say even if he knew? He was a member of the Yuan family, so naturally he had to put the Yuan family first. He could only forcefully refute. That was the ancestor's subconscious reaction when he saw that his family's disciple was in danger. Gu Xingyin sneered, "Please feel your conscience when you speak. That old ancestor of yours tried to kill me the moment he attacked. Did he care about my opponent in the slightest? If he really cared about his family's disciples, that Yuan family member of yours wouldn't have suffered such injuries." After she finished speaking, she cupped her hands at the judges and referees. "We, the people of Nine Hells Purgatory, will not be schemed against for nothing. Please give us a proper explanation." After she finished speaking, she didn't care about the expressions of the people around her and directly sat on the moonlight unicorn. In an instant, she disappeared from the competition grounds. The person in charge of the Zhen family only felt that there were all kinds of eyes staring at him from all directions. He could sense the meaning behind those gazes. None of the people present were fools. Coupled with Gu Xingyin's words, they had a better understanding of the Zhen family's plans. Who would have thought that a dignified saint-level expert would actually use such a sinister method on a junior in his 20s? Yet, he still failed. The Yuan family was truly, the person in charge of the Yuan family felt tormented under such gazes. But he couldn't leave. If he did, it would only prove that the Yuan family was in the wrong. He secretly prayed for the ancestor's arrival. As long as the ancestor appeared, the pressure of a saint-level expert would suppress the crowd. Who would dare say a word? Unfortunately, the Yuan family's ancestor couldn't make it. Chapter 1478. The Yuan family's ancestor wasn't far from the arena to begin with. He was very confident in his sure-kill move, but when he saw that Gu Xingyin was completely unharmed, his heart sank. She didn't show the slightest hint of panic from beginning to end. It didn't seem like a normal reaction at all. The Yuan family's ancestor, who loved conspiracy theories, instantly felt that this might be a trap. He subconsciously wanted to leave. It had to be said that his premonition was very accurate, but his reaction was still a step too slow. For some reason, the area he was in had been completely sealed off. The Yuan family's ancestor's heart trembled. To be able to set up a barrier in this area without him noticing, and to have a close relationship with him recently, he had a rough idea of the person's identity. As expected, Lin Yuan's figure appeared in the air in front of him. What is the meaning of this, Lin Yuan Lord? The Yuan family's ancestor was on high alert, but his face was filled with confusion and anger. Lin Yuan Lord sneered, but didn't want to waste words with this old thing. He raised his head, and a long sword that was still burning with crimson flames appeared in his hand. The Yuan family's ancestor's eyes narrowed. Judging from the other party's appearance, he couldn't be kind anymore. However, a faint premonition in his heart told him that he couldn't fight Lin Yuan Lord head-on. He wasn't Lin Yuan Lord's match. The Yuan family's ancestor forced himself to calm down. Lin Yuan Lord, you forcibly set up a barrier on the Devil Beast continent and attacked without saying a word. Could it be that you're treating the Devil Beast continent as your 9 hells purgatory? Lin Yuan Lord sneered. The long sword in his hand didn't make any fancy movements, and he only lightly slashed in the direction of the Yuan family's ancestor. There wasn't any earth-shattering movement, but the Yuan family's ancestor's hair stood on end. Wherever the longsword's sword-light passed, black cracks would appear. A sword cut through space. Not daring to be careless, the Yuan family's ancestor hurriedly retreated, barely dodging the sword. However, the other sword had already caught up to him. Abyssal Lord looked relaxed the entire time. If it weren't for the fact that wherever his sword passed, the space would collapse, others would have thought that he was just practicing his sword dance leisurely. In comparison, the Yuan family's old ancestor wasn't as relaxed. He only felt that every time the Abyssal Lord's sword was about to touch his skin, and every time he dodged, he could feel the heat that seemed to be burning his soul. In the past, he only knew that Abyssal Lord was very strong. But only after truly exchanging blows did he realize just how strong Abyssal Lord was. No wonder the people of the 9 hells purgatory had such an expression. Old bastard from the Yuan clan. Lin Yuan finally spoke. However, the words he spoke caused the Yuan ancestor to burn with rage. He had been known as a genius on the magical beast continent since he was young. Later on, his path had been smooth sailing until he became a saint-level expert who stood at the peak of the entire continent. In his entire life, he had always received the respect and adoration of others. When had he ever endured such humiliation? But Abyssal Lord didn't even consider whether he was happy or not. Of course, the more unhappy the Yuan family's patriarch was, the better Lin Yuan's mood would be. He continued, I, Lin Yuan, have never wanted someone's life as much as I do today. There were many people in the world who wanted his life, but he didn't care at all. Because he knew that others wouldn't have the chance. However, anyone who had any ideas about Tian-Yi deserved to die. Chapter 1479. When he heard Lin Yuan's words, the Yuan family forefather understood that he wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. He cast aside all thoughts of luck and focused on finding an opportunity to escape. He wasn't looking for a chance to counterattack, but a chance to escape. That's right, escape. If the two of them were evenly matched, the Yuan family forefather might have fought Lin Yuan to the death. Who would survive would depend on strength and luck. But things were different now. The difference in strength between him and Lin Yuan was too great. If this continued, there would only be one outcome, his death and Lin Yuan's death. The Yuan family forefather didn't want to die. Sage realm experts had long lifespans. He still had an unlimited amount of time to live. He wanted to pursue a higher realm and bring the Yuan family to greater heights. He wanted. His thoughts came to an abrupt halt. A scarlet sword slowly pierced through his neck. Lin Yuan released the long sword in his hand, and the long sword condensed from flames instantly drilled into the Yuan family's old ancestor's wounds. Ah! The Yuan family forefather couldn't endure the bone-piercing pain and howled in agony. That flame had entered his internal organs through his wounds and even into his soul. It burned his blood, devoured his flesh, and ground away at his soul. It was more torturous than any torture in the world. Lin Yuan quietly watched the scene unfold before him. He knew the Yuan family forefather wouldn't survive. The long sword was formed from the most tyrannical earth core fire in the depths of 9 hells purgatory. It was said to be the most tyrannical flame in the world. It could even refine souls. Lin Yuan could have burned the Yuan family forefather to ashes in an instant, but he hadn't. He wanted to properly entertain the old man and repay him for his evil intentions toward Tianyi. This flame would burn for a total of 49 days. He glanced coldly at the Yuan family forefather, who was lying on the ground, unable to get up, then turned and left. During these 49 days, the Yuan family forefather was conscious. He could feel every inch of the flame wreaking havoc in his body. However, he couldn't open his eyes, speak, or do anything. He could only endure the pain in vain and walk towards death in despair. In order to prevent others from disturbing him, Lin Yuan even placed a restriction on the Yuan family's ancestor's body. Other than the Yuan family, no one could see him. As for the Yuan family, a trace of coldness flashed through Lin Yuan's eyes. They should pray for their own good fortune. Perhaps everything in this world was fate. Not long after Lin Yuan left, a figure in a white dress walked into the alley. It was Yuan Qin. She had been having a hard time recently. In the past 10 years, she had always been with Yuan Tianqin. Yuan Tianqin trusted and doted on her, so she lived a good life. Even if she couldn't cultivate, the geniuses of the Yuan family would still treat her with respect. With Yuan Tianqin's character, it was easy for him to offend people. It was just that with his strength before, the others dared to be angry in their hearts but did not dare to say anything. But things were different now. The news of Yuan Tianqin becoming a cripple wasn't kept a secret. Everyone knew about it. The disciples of the Yuan family who had been bullied by Yuan Tianqin wouldn't bother with an unconscious cripple. Therefore, Yuan Qin, who used to be Yuan Tianqin's most trusted aide, naturally received their extra attention. Chapter 1480. So these days, Yuan Qin always encountered all kinds of accidents in all kinds of situations. She was very angry and angry. But what was the point? Her biggest backer had been crippled. She herself was just an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate. And those people from the Yuan family who made things difficult for her were all at least intermediate summoners. Today, she finally managed to avoid those people and came out to take a breather. But as soon as she came out, she saw the person lying in the alley. The old man's clothes looked very familiar. Yuan Qin's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but walk closer to take a look. Then, she gasped, the person lying on the ground was actually the Yuan family's ancestor. Yuan Qin was very scared. She didn't know why the ancestor fainted here. Did something go wrong with his cultivation? Or was he plotted against? In comparison, the latter was more likely. But how terrifying was it to be able to turn a dignified saint expert into an existence like this? The Yuan family's ancestor was the pillar of the Yuan family. If he died, the Yuan family's thousands of years of foundation and countless resources would definitely be lost. Yuan Qin reached out her hand and carefully touched the ancestor's nose. Fortunately, there was still air. She sighed in relief. But before she could relax, something unexpected happened. A wisp of scarlet flames suddenly surged out of the ancestor's nose and pounced on Yuan Qin's body. Yuan Qin subconsciously pulled her hand back, but it was useless. The flames had already touched her body. An intense pain came from Yuan Qin's fingertips, and then the little flame suddenly exploded. Before Yuan Qin could react, it spread to her whole body. The ancestor's body could last for 49 days, but Yuan Qin was just an ordinary person. What would happen when an ordinary person's body encountered the world's most tyrannical flames? Yuan Qin still remembered her unwillingness at the last second before the flames devoured her consciousness. She still hadn't become a real person. She still hadn't taken revenge on that bitch Yuan Tianyi. She still, wherever the transparent flame passed, her entire body would turn into a part of the flame. In the blink of an eye, everything was burned to ashes and the flames were extinguished. There was a small pinch of fine dust on the ground. When a gust of wind blew, the fine dust drifted to every corner of the ground, just like any speck of dust in this mortal world. Not a single trace was left behind. Gu Xingyin, who was waiting for Lin Yuan to return in the courtyard, suddenly received a system prompt in her mind, saying that the mission target had died. Gu Xingyin. Why didn't she know what had happened to Yuan Qin? The system dutifully transmitted what Lin Yuan had done and Yuan Qin's experience into her mind. This. Even Gu Xingyin was dumbfounded. This was too much of a coincidence. Lin Yuan had just set up such a restriction, and Yuan Qin just so happened to walk out, and just so happened to go to the place where the Yuan clan ancestor was. Turning into ashes, no one even knew that he had died. Such an outcome was absolutely unacceptable to Yuan Qin, right? After all, with that woman's ambition, she wanted nothing more than to stand at the peak of the Devil Beast continent. But this was good news for Gu Xingyin. Chapter 1481. She was thinking with her head down when a warm body suddenly pressed against her from behind. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Gu Xingyin took the opportunity to lean back and ask lazily, "Have you finished what you wanted to do?" Lin Yuan had told her that he was going to do something and asked her to come back first. Lin Yuan nodded, "It's all taken care of." "Okay." Gu Xingyin smiled, "Let's go back." Lin Yuan was stunned, "Go back? Aren't you going to finish the summoner conference?" Gu Xingyin shook her head, "I just wanted to play with the Yuan family. Now that even Yuan Tianqin was defeated by me, there's no reason for me to stay." "You don't want the title of summoner's young king?" Lin Yuan turned his head and kissed her ear. Gu Xingyin tilted her head to avoid his kiss and laughed, "What's the use of that thing to me?" Moreover, even if she didn't continue to participate, who could deny that she was the strongest person? "Okay." Lin Yuan didn't say anything and the two left directly. The next day, no one came to participate in Gu Xingyin's competition. When the organizer of the summoner conference came to check, they found that the young summoner with unlimited potential from Nine Hells Purgatory had already disappeared. In the end, because of Gu Xingyin's absence, the champion of this summoner conference was won by another genius. The Yuan family, which was said to be the most likely to win the championship, only had one disciple in the top 10. However, although Gu Xingyin didn't win the championship, in everyone's heart, she was the most powerful young summoner. Not only among the young summoners, but many people even thought that this summoner called Gu Yuan could completely jump out of the circle of young people and truly become the top summoner in the entire magical beast continent. Because of her, there were even many people who wanted to visit Nine Hells Purgatory to learn regardless of the danger, but they couldn't enter. According to Lin Yuan's words, those humans were all evil. Letting them in was simply destroying the environment of Nine Hells Purgatory. Gu Xingyin agreed with this. She also did not want some strange humans to disturb their peaceful life. Gu Xingyin and Lin Yuan entered into a companion contract under the witness of countless devil beasts in Nine Hells Purgatory. They officially became partners who would never abandon each other in life and death. From then on, Gu Xingyin began to live the life of a goddess who had everything she needed. Lin Yuan had originally placed her in the palm of his hand and doted on her. After the two of them officially got together, this doting instantly rose several levels. Even Gu Xingyin's magical beasts started to avoid arousing suspicion. Unless Gu Xingyin summoned them, they would not appear. It was simply too torturous. In her spare time, Gu Xingyin would occasionally pay attention to the happenings in the magical beast continent. 3 years later, the Yuan clan was unable to hide the news of their ancestor's death. Naturally, the other clans with similar strength to the Yuan clan wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Thus, after a few rounds of coercion and carving up, the great family that was once second to none in the Dragon Phoenix Empire instantly fell apart and ceased to exist. 10 years later, a mysterious woman claimed to have come from 9 Hells Purgatory. She led countless powerful magical beasts and challenged all the saint-level experts in the magical beast continent. She was undefeated. She never mentioned her name, but everyone knew that this woman was the one who shocked the entire magical beast continent during the Summoner Conference 10 years ago. Gu Yuan. Chapter 1482. Gu Xingyin left a legend in the Warcraft continent that countless people looked up to, and disappeared without a trace once again. After this time, she never appeared on this continent again. But even so, the entire Warcraft continent has left countless legends about her. Many, many years later, those children who have never heard of the name Gu Yuan will also see records of this mysterious summoner from the school textbooks. In the textbook, there is only one sentence for the introduction of the mysterious summoner called Gu Yuan, a summoner favored by the gods. This short sentence is enough to let people imagine that in that era, this magical woman, alone, shocked the entire Warcraft continent. Gu Xingyin and Lin Yuan have lived together for a long, long time. For a long time, the Warcraft continent has experienced countless vicissitudes of life. In the end, the summoner profession gradually declined, warriors began to rise, and magical beasts became fewer and fewer. Finally, the day of the end has arrived. The two held hands and lay together in the sea of flowers. Gu Xingyin felt the strength in her body slowly drain away. She knew that the moment was coming. Lin Yuan, who had been lying quietly all this time, suddenly turned sideways. He leaned down and gently planted a kiss on Gu Xingyin's lips. His eyes were so bright, so deep that Gu Xingyin could not see the emotions contained in them. In this life, I finally spent a lifetime with you. Gu Xingyin's heart trembled. She wanted to open her eyes wide and take a good look at Lin Yuan's expression at this time, but a heavier darkness came, and she could only unwillingly close her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, Gu Xingyin's eyes were full of excitement. System, did he think of me? Gu Xingyin was not sure if she was hallucinating at that time. The system's white light flashed. Host, this possibility is not ruled out. Getting an affirmative answer from the system, Gu Xingyin's eyes were full of smiles. The system looked at the smile on Gu Xingyin's face and had to remind her, Host, your lover will at most recover his memory the moment he leaves the mission world. In the next life, he may not know you. The system felt that it was better to make it clear to the host, so that the host would not be disappointed. Who knew that Gu Xingyin was not as disappointed as it imagined when she heard this? She nodded as usual, I know. She gently stretched out her hand, and a small kingfisher quickly formed in her hand, and energetically spread its small wings and flew up in this space. Gu Xingyin looked at the emerald bird, her eyes full of joy. The skills from the previous mission world had given her a deeper understanding of creation. But there was still a little bit. Her soul was not complete. This little thing could only live half the lifespan of her normal companions. But Gu Xingyin was very happy. At most, there were 2 more worlds, and she would be able to create a real living thing. She looked at the kingfisher flying happily in the space and silently said in her heart, Little guy, next time, I will give you a complete life. When that time came, she would be one step closer to leaving this space. System, go to the next world. She said. The system replied, Yes, host. Start transmission, 3, 2, 1. Chapter 1483. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes and found herself she was actually in the water. Luckily, her many missions had forged her perfect endurance. She immediately looked around and asked the system to transmit her memories and plot. When she raised her head, she saw herself in the mercury mirror. At first glance, she heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, she was human. At second glance, what the hell was that tail below? However, she was not too shocked. After all, she had acted as a mermaid before. The system transmitted the plot and memories over in a timely manner. Galaxy Calendar, 1433. This world was a highly technologically advanced plane. Human genes had been optimized to an extremely terrifying level. The strongest among humans could fight against a fully equipped mech with their physical body. They could even ignore the influence of gravity and walk in the sky with their own body. Of course, not many people would do that. After all, there were hover cars, flying machines and other more convenient and fast means of transportation. The Casso Empire, where Gu Xingyin's body was located, had already conquered 5 nearby star regions and had become the strongest king in this universe. However, there were pros and cons. When genetic optimization was first introduced, no one could resist the temptation. Their abilities became stronger, their lifespans became longer, and even their appearances became more beautiful. At that time, the ruler also strongly advocated the people of the empire to undergo genetic optimization. They believed that this was a blessing from the heavens to mankind. When the people of the Casso Empire become stronger, they would become even more invincible in their expansion. At the beginning, everyone had tasted the benefits of genetic optimization and believed that it was a good way to lead mankind to become stronger. However, after 300 years, the drawbacks of genetic optimization began to show. Those couples who had undergone genetic optimization, no matter if it was natural conception, test tube baby, or in vitro cultivation, all the children she gave birth to were male. The empire no longer had any females born. This was a devastating blow to an empire that was developing rapidly. Without females, there was no way to reproduce. If this continued, no matter how powerful Casso Empire was, it would not be able to avoid the end of its existence. All the biologists, geneticists, and geneticists in the Casso Empire, as long as they were related to research, they all began to research this topic that could affect the future of the empire. Soon, the results came out. It turned out that after the genetic evolution, the first 2 generations of humans did not show any changes. Later on, when the optimized humans went through marriage and gave birth to children, a mysterious recessive gene mutated. The X chromosome had undergone an extremely bizarre mutation. In the entire Casso Empire, no more females would be born. When this news came out, no one could sit still. Even the emperor issued several orders in succession to put aside all research and focus on solving this problem. However, no matter how hard the scholars tried, the X chromosome eventually lost its effect on humans who had undergone genetic optimization. Just when everyone was at a dead end, a young scholar came up with an ingenious idea. Atavism. Humans evolved from marine creatures, so why not start their research from this point of view? Chapter 1484. Although this young scholar's idea could be said to be unconstrained, it undoubtedly provided the scholars who had fallen into a dead end with a new line of thought. Following this direction of research, they finally made some progress. A special gene was extracted from marine fish creatures and injected into the gene solution, allowing the new humans to have an additional recessive gene. Through sexual reproduction, a new type of human was successfully born. This type of human had the body of a normal human, but had the tail of a fish. Because this form was exactly the same as the mermaids in the human imagination of the ancient blue planet, this type of creature was called mermaids. All mermaids had a female form, and the best news was that they could mate with genetically evolved humans and reproduce. This news sent the entire Casso Empire into a frenzy. But then came the problem: compared to the population of the empire, the number of mermaids was quite small. And most importantly, mermaids' bodies were very delicate and weak. If they stumbled a little, it was likely that their bodies would be bruised. For this reason, the empire had to issue a decree specifically targeting mermaids. In any family, if a mermaid was born, they could be sent to a special mermaid school, and the empire would pay for free education. Mermaids did not need to pay taxes, were prohibited from engaging in dangerous industries, and would receive monthly subsidies. All kinds of regulations, none of which did not protect the interests of mermaids. But no one objected to this. Compared to the huge population base of the empire, the resources enjoyed by these mermaids were simply insignificant. Moreover, there was another clause in the mermaid decree: after every mermaid reached adulthood, they would undergo genetic adaptation. The empire would select the most suitable partner for each mermaid from the gene bank. This was almost like contracting the entire life of the merfolk. The empire was also helpless. Even if the problem of reproduction was solved, the number of mermaids was too small. Every mermaid was the most precious treasure of the empire. What they could do was to give the mermaids as much freedom as possible and protect their safety to the greatest extent. The body that Gu Xingyin came into was a mermaid. At that time, the mermaid decree had been around for hundreds of years, and the protection of mermaids' rights had reached a peak. Every mermaid would be sent to a special mermaid institution to take care of them after they were born. When they grew up, they could go to a special mermaid school to receive the best education. The name of this body was Deanna Leonard. She was born in the Leonard family, one of the wealthiest families in the Casso Empire. Her mother, Cassie, was a very gentle mermaid. Her father, Anderson Leonard, was one of the wealthiest people in the empire and had connections with many military and political figures. After Deanna's parents gave birth to 2 sons, they finally welcomed a mermaid daughter. One could imagine how much they doted on her. Deanna had been pampered and spoiled by the whole family since she was a child. Because of this, she had been raised to have an innocent and pure temperament. She did not understand the sinister nature of the human heart. She thought that everyone in the world was like her family, kind and wonderful. Her parents used treasures and love to build an ivory tower for her, but they didn't expect that because of this, their little mermaid daughter, who was pampered like a treasure, would lose her life. Chapter 1485. Deanna was intelligent by nature and learned everything quickly. She had been educated in a special mermaid school since she was a child. Her classmates, like her, were all mermaids, and almost from childhood to adulthood, those classmates would not change. Deanna, even in a school full of mermaids, was the most dazzling. She had long blonde hair, which would emit a more dazzling light than gold under the sun. Her eyes were the color of the sea. When she looked at you with watery eyes, you could drown in them at any time. She had milk-white skin. Even if you used the most picky lens to take a picture, you could not find a trace of flaw, just like a piece of flawless white porcelain. From childhood to adulthood, whether it was classical literature, music, or painting, she was always the best in the school. The teachers of the mermaid school would raise a proud smile on their faces when they mentioned Deanna. Our Deanna is simply a natural aristocrat. Deanna, who was like this, naturally had many people around her who liked her. But where there was sunshine, there would always be shadows. Similarly, there were also people who did not like her secretly. Humans always liked to compare, and mermaids were the same. And Deanna, in the eyes of all the mermaids, was naturally the child of another family. Audrey was a mermaid with flaxen seaweed-like long curly hair. She was very beautiful, and she was very good at her studies. She was also very popular in school. All of the above were things to be proud of. However, all of these things that Audrey was proud of were inferior to Deanna. She was not as beautiful as Deanna, her skills were not as good as Deanna's, and she did not even have as many friends as Deanna. How could Audrey be reconciled to this? Mermaids were arrogant and willful, so they would directly show their unhappiness and dislike. Audrey did not like Deanna. This was something that the whole mermaid school knew. If it was just this, then forget it. At most, Audrey disliked Deanna on the surface. But Audrey always had a little secret in her heart. She liked His Royal Highness Prince Jonathan of the Empire. Prince Jonathan was the younger brother of His Majesty. He had a good relationship with His Majesty. He had a noble status and was very handsome. He was the dream lover of countless mermaids. Audrey knew that the better the genes, the more difficult it was to find a suitable match for a mermaid. She was confident that her genes were excellent, and it was very likely that she would be a match for Prince Jonathan. But the result made her furious. Her genetic compatibility with Prince Jonathan was 88%. This was already an extremely high degree of compatibility. She had originally thought that she would have no problem marrying the prince. However, Deanna's result slapped her hard in the face, 93%. Deanna's genetic compatibility with Prince Jonathan was 5% higher than Audrey's. According to the normal process, the one with a higher degree of compatibility was naturally the most suitable partner. Looking at the shy and gentle smile on Deanna's face, the devil in Audrey's heart finally came out. She asked Deanna out on the pretext that she was about to graduate and hoped to bury the hatchet with Deanna. She also said that she didn't want anyone to disturb them when they were meeting. Deanna, a girl who was so naive that she was almost silly and sweet, actually agreed. She drove her mermaid carriage and went to see Audrey alone. Then, he was killed by Audrey, who had lost her mind. Chapter 1486. System, Draw Skill. Gu Xingyin said. System, ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Best Chef skill. Gu Xingyin frowned. What is the Best Chef skill? The system explained, the host's culinary skills have reached the level of a master. Gu Xingyin, it sounded very impressive, but... Hee. At this time, her room door was pushed open, and a mermaid using a mermaid carriage walked in. Mother's Deanna, are you unhappy? As soon as Casey entered, she saw her younger daughter sitting in the large pool in the room with a frown. Mermaids like to stay in the water, they felt that staying in the water was more comfortable than being exposed to the air. Therefore, every mermaid's room was equipped with a large enough thermostatic pool. Gu Xingyin looked up at the mother of this body. It seemed that Deanna had inherited her mother's beauty. Casey also had a head of dazzling golden hair, and eyes as blue as the sea. It was just that compared to Deanna's unbelievably delicate face, Casey's features were softer, and her temperament was more gentle. Looking at the pair of gentle blue eyes looking at her worriedly, Gu Xingyin couldn't help but smile. She casually found an excuse. It's okay mother, I just remembered that I have to go to school soon, so I don't want to leave home. Every month, the mermaid school would give these underage mermaids a week-long holiday. Those mermaids who lived far away could also return home to reunite with their families. As for Deanna, whose family was in the imperial capital, naturally, there would be people from her family coming to pick her up during the holidays. Hearing her daughter's somewhat willful words, Casey smiled. She looked at her daughter dotingly and said, Jason will come back later, let him send you off. Jason was Casey and Anderson's second son, and also Deanna's second brother, and now he was working in the military. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up, second brother is coming back. He finally has a holiday. The Imperial Military Department was the place with the strictest discipline in the entire empire. Deanna's second brother, Jason, had always been very busy. He rarely came back to reunite with his family during non-holidays. Cassie was also very happy. Yes, Jason said that he has a 2-day break and will come back to have lunch with us today. Great! Jason Leonard was a handsome man with a valiant bearing. She had also inherited her mother's beauty, but his handsome face was always stern and unsmiling. He looked very serious and unapproachable. Every time Casey saw her second son like this, she was very worried. Jason's unapproachable look would frighten those delicate mermaids. At that time, what would Jason do with his mate? Jason did not care at all. In fact, he had always had an idol in his heart. Ever since he was a teenager, he had been subconsciously imitating the words and actions of his idol. It was also because of his idol that he was able to enter the Empire's top military academy. Who is Jason's idol? The entire Leonard family knew that it was the new commander of the military who was known as the #1 male god of the Casso Empire, Cargel Raymond. Whenever he talked about the deeds of this Commander Raymond, he would excitedly talk to anyone on the streets of the imperial capital for half a day. This young commander was the idol of almost all the young people in the Empire. Chapter 1487. Diana. The handsome man with an indifferent face smiled when he saw Gu Xingyin coming out in the mermaid scooter. He quickly stepped forward and gave Gu Xingyin a hug. Towards this little sister, the Leonard family's attitude was surprisingly consistent: spoil, spoil, spoil. Such a delicate and beautiful little mermaid should be placed in the palm of the hand and spoiled as she grew up. Diana's eldest brother, Burton, inherited his father's career and developed in the business world. He could only regretfully say today that he had a very important meeting to attend and could not have lunch with the lovely Diana and sent her to school. Gu Xingyin finished lunch with her family, packed up some things, and went out in her mermaid scooter under Cassie's reluctant gaze. Watching Cassie send her all the way out of the Leonard family's mansion, Gu Xingyin was a little helpless. She turned around and gently kissed Cassie's face. "Go back, Mom, don't worry, I will be back next month." She got into the hover car, and Jason was already waiting for her in the driver's seat. "Do you want to go shopping today?" Jason asked. Occasionally, when she went to school, Diana would first go to the shopping mall in the central area to buy some small things she liked. Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I don't want to buy anything today." Well, Jason could only hide the regret in his heart. Would he say that he actually really liked to go shopping with Diana? Looking at the lovely Diana staring at those things with sparkling eyes, he wished he could spend all his crystal cards in one go. When they arrived at school, Jason kissed Gu Xingyin's forehead with great reluctance. "Diana, brother can only send you here. The mermaid school, except for every semester or during a long holiday, was absolutely not allowed to enter other people. Because the mermaid's body was too fragile, and most of the mermaids' minds were very simple. Under such circumstances, it was easy for others to pretend to be family members and take advantage of the loopholes." Gu Xingyin nodded and took the initiative to say goodbye to Jason. She then drove her mermaid scooter into the school. "Good afternoon, Diana. You're early today." The old man with a white beard who was guarding the school gate greeted Gu Xingyin with a smile. Jack always sat in the sun with his eyes closed and dozed off. These mere people all thought that the old man had found a job to pass the time after retirement. But Gu Xingyin knew that was not the case. Because from the information given by the system, this old man Jack's strength was actually A+. One had to know that the requirement to become a first-class soldier in the military was to have a combat strength of B+. A combat strength of A+ was almost enough to enter the legendary special forces under the direct command of Raymond, the commander of the military headquarters. It was said that this group was very mysterious. There weren't many people, but every one of them was an expert who could fight against 100 people. And such an ordinary old guard in front of him actually had such a strong martial strength. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, "It seems that no one in this mermaid school can be underestimated." But the old guard was so familiar with this face. Diana's popularity was really good. She also returned a bright smile. "Good afternoon, Grandpa Jack." At this time, a cold snort suddenly came from behind her. Chapter 1488. Gu Xingyin turned her head and saw a mermaid who was also sitting in the mermaid carriage, looking at her with an unhappy face. Mermaids were very sensitive to aura, but even if they were not sensitive, Gu Shengyin could see the girl's undisguised expression that she did not like her. The mermaid had flaxen seaweed-like curly hair, gorgeous facial features, and a fiery red fishtail. Gu Shengyin couldn't help but look down. Her tail was the same as her eyes, dark blue. This mermaid was Audrey, who had always been at odds with Deanna. In fact, it was only Audrey's unilateral opinion that she did not want to deal with Deanna. Deanna had always felt that although the other party was not very friendly to her, she did not take it to heart. She felt that she already had so many friends anyway. It didn't matter if Audrey was not willing to be her friend, right? Gu Shengyin looked at the other party staring at her. She thought about it and did nothing. She turned her head silently. Deanna did not quarrel. When she encountered people who did not want to talk, she would at most remain silent. But her action, in Audrey's eyes, was that Deanna looked down on her. She did not even bother to look at her. So Audrey was actually the one who was being unreasonable. If Gu Shengyin did not turn around just now, but greeted her with a smile, Audrey's reaction would definitely be to turn her head and snort coldly, pretending not to hear. So she would do this herself, but she could not stand others treating her with the same attitude. The old guard, Jack, leaned lazily on his recliner and looked at the two young girls. He did not say that he completely liked Hu, but as an old man, he still preferred those well-behaved and polite young people. Therefore, between Deanna and Audrey, Uncle Jack naturally favored Deanna. So he said, "Deanna, didn't you just say that you were a little tired and wanted to go back and rest? The sun is so bright now. You'd better hurry up." Gu Shengyin instantly understood the old man's kindness. She smiled at Grandpa Jack. "Then I'll take my leave first, Grandpa Jack." After that, she didn't look at Audrey behind her and drove her mermaid carriage away. Audrey had nowhere to vent her anger. She could only glare hatefully at Jack, who had closed his eyes and was pretending to sleep again. She then left angrily. Until the two figures disappeared, Jack sighed slowly, "Young people, don't be too impulsive." Gu Shengyin went to her room. The conditions of the mermaid school were the best in the entire Queso Empire. Every mermaid had their own separate apartment, which was equipped with an all-around robot that was responsible for all the daily matters of each mermaid's life. "Welcome back, dear Deanna." The robot was a very cute child, and the image was very realistic. If she didn't know beforehand, Gu Shengyin would even think that it was a real person. The appearance of the robot could be chosen by the director himself. Deanna chose the appearance of a very delicate and cute little girl for her robot, Anna. "Thank you, Anna." Gu Shengyin said hello to her seriously. This was also Deanna's habit. The girl would treat everything around her with a very friendly and positive attitude. Whether they had life or not. Chapter 1489. Gu Shengyin sat in her room, watching the robot Deanna diligently tidying up her luggage. Then she brought over a plate of food. "This is your afternoon tea, my dear Deanna." It was fruits and a special nutrient solution. Gu Shengyin took it with a smile and was about to eat it when he heard his communicator ring. She reached out and opened it, and a bright smiling face appeared in midair. "Deanna, are you at school? My mother made delicious snacks for me. I brought them over for you now." Gu Shengyin couldn't help but laugh. "Okay." The person who spoke was Deanna's very good friend, Sophia, a mermaid who also lived in the imperial capital. Soon, there was a knock on her door, and Sophia drove her mermaid scooter in. Seeing the tray in front of Gu Shengyin, she couldn't help but complain, "Our Deanna is such an obedient child. If it were me, I wouldn't be willing to eat these things." Sophia was talking about afternoon tea. The afternoon tea at school was the same thing over and over again. Many mermaids didn't eat them at all. Gu Shengyin smiled and said, "It's good for the body to eat." She was telling the truth. Not to mention the fruits, just the bottle of special nutrient solution that was necessary every day was a good thing that couldn't be bought with money. But even though many mermaids knew that not many could persist in drinking the same thing for more than 10 years. Diana was one of them. The reason this girl persisted was simple: she liked the taste of the nutrient solution. Sophia looked at her helplessly. "Okay, I don't want to talk about this with a good girl like you. Come and see what I brought for you." She looked a little excited, and took out a very delicately packaged box from the bag behind her. Looking at her expectant expression, Gu Xingyin didn't hesitate. She took it and opened it with her own hands. It was a very ordinary-looking cake. Sophia said proudly, "This is a cake that my mother made herself. Try it, it's delicious." Gu Xingyin gently scooped a spoonful and put it into her mouth. Faced with Sophia's sparkling eyes, she smiled and said, "It tastes good." In fact, the taste could only be considered average. However, according to Gu Xingyin's understanding, in today's world, due to the advancement of technology to a certain extent, robots could almost take care of everything in every household. Of course, that included cooking. There was no doubt that the food made by the robots was delicious. However, the robots' program design was very exquisite. The amount of ingredients used was accurate to the milligram. The food they made simply looked, smelled, and tasted good. However, after eating too much, one would find that it always tasted the same. Therefore, most people who got tired of eating food made by robots would try to act on their own. However, the casual people, whose genes had been optimized to an extremely high level, did not have the ability to cook. It was as if they were not naturally good at this. Most of the things made by the casual people were difficult to even make. Therefore, under such circumstances, Sophia's mother, who could barely make a cake that looked, smelled, and tasted good, was indeed very impressive. Gu Xingyin sighed to the system, "Now that I think about it, my skills in this world are actually pretty good." The system replied, "That seems to be the case, host." Chapter 1490. Sophia was a very energetic little girl. She was 2 months older than Diana and had an extroverted personality. She also had no sisters in her family. Naturally, she had always treated this obedient and beautiful little mermaid as her own sister. She quietly said to Gu Xingyin, "Diana, I'm going to the genetic matching center next week for genetic matching." Her face was a little red when she said this, but her eyes shone with anticipation mixed with nervousness. All the mermaids knew that they would become partners with a powerful man from the empire in the future. They were not resistant to this and even longed to be with the strong, so they were also looking forward to their future partners. When Sophia said this, Gu Xingyin remembered that she was not far away from 18 years old. Sophia was obviously very excited. She pulled Gu Xingyin and chattered endlessly. All of them were about the handsome and strong golden bachelors in the empire. But what made Sophia the happiest was not these, but, she would soon have her own legs. When a mermaid reached adulthood, she would be able to freely control the transformation of her body's tail and legs. But many mermaids preferred to maintain the shape of a fish tail rather than walking on 2 legs. Take Diana's mother, Cassie, for example. Cassie would use the mermaid carriage whenever Diana saw her. But for those underage mermaids, having a pair of legs was a very novel experience. They almost could not wait to try the feeling of standing on 2 legs. Gu Xingyin was also very much looking forward to it. To be honest, although this fish tail was very beautiful and there were no inconveniences in the mermaid carriage, she still preferred to walk on 2 legs. Fortunately, there were only 2 months left. There were only 2 months left before Diana's genetic matching. Finally, Sophia said the reason for her visit: "Next week, we just happen to have a day off. Diana, can you come with me?" Sophia's parents and brothers would definitely follow her to the genetic matching, but after all, they were not of the same age. She really hoped that Diana could accompany her. Gu Xingyin felt that this was nothing and nodded in agreement. From the next day onwards, they went through various classes as usual. Today's lesson was music. The courses that merfolk studied were generally based on elegance and art. Because the empire clearly ordered that mermaids were not allowed to engage in any work related to physical strength. This was also for the sake of their bodies. After all, compared to male humans, their bodies were too weak. If they were not careful, they might get injured. Therefore, in addition to staying at home, the merfolk who came out to work were generally teachers and musicians, which were more elegant professions. Diana was very talented in these arts, and she was always the best in her music classes. However, Audrey seemed to be in a good mood today. When she entered the classroom, she saw Diana and smiled. Gu Xingyin's intuition told her that this was not a good thing. Sure enough, after Audrey walked in, she proudly said to Gu Xingyin, "Diana, I have prepared a very rare work today. You have to be serious. Don't lose." Chapter 1491. Gu Xingyin glanced at her and smiled. "I'm looking forward to Audrey's work." She smiled without any haze, as if she was really congratulating her. Audrey didn't think so. In her mind, Diana must be very uneasy at the moment, but in order to maintain her appearance as a good girl, she had to force a smile and pretend to congratulate her. If Gu Xingyin knew what she was thinking, she would say, "Girl, you have too many tricks up your sleeve." Audrey's face was smug. "You can feel uneasy. Later, I will give everyone a big surprise." She was full of expectations for what was to come. She imagined that she would be praised and watched by everyone later. At that time, let's see if Diana could still maintain her naive and hypocritical appearance. She didn't hide her thoughts at all. Gu Xingyin looked at her and was a little curious. What exactly did she prepare? This time, in order to maintain her curiosity, she forced herself not to let the system tell her the answer. The last part of the music class was to let the students who had ideas perform on stage by themselves. The merfolk school had strong funds. Basically, in this classroom, any musical instrument that was circulating in the interstellar could be found. Gu Xingyin didn't have the intention to be in the limelight in the class. In the past, Diana had performed on stage, but most of the time, she had been instigated by her friends. Some of the merfolk, led by Sophia, simply couldn't stand Audrey's proud appearance. Every time, they couldn't help but want Diana to go up and teach her a lesson. As for why it was Diana and not herself who went up, the straightforward merfolk said one after another, because although Audrey is annoying, she is really powerful. If Diana doesn't go up, they can't beat her at all by themselves. Soon, it was time for the students to perform as usual. Audrey stood up almost impatiently. She had an excited smile on her face, walked to the stage, and then took out a strange-looking thing from her storage device. The merfolk in the audience looked at the thing curiously. What was this? They seemed to have never seen it before. Even the teacher in charge of teaching them music was very surprised and asked, "Audrey, is this also a musical instrument?" She asked because she saw something that was obviously a zither string. A proud smile appeared on Audrey's face. "Yes, Teacher Liz. This is an ancient musical instrument passed down from the ancient blue planet. I saw it in a book of my family's collection and made it according to the description." Gu Xingyin looked at the instrument in Audrey's hand with a strange expression. Wasn't this a harp? Previously, when she saw Audrey's appearance, she thought it was something mysterious. She looked at the harp in Audrey's hand and commented in her heart, "Well, the harp is originally a very beautiful instrument." Obviously, Audrey has taken this feature to the extreme. There are even many patterns carved on the body of the harp and inlaid with pearls. Audrey naturally saw Gu Xingyin's expression. In fact, her attention was always on Gu Xingyin's face. Looking at the stunned expression on her face, Audrey thought that the other party was shocked. Later, when she saw the admiration in Gu Xingyin's eyes, Audrey felt very proud. Chapter 1492. Audrey began to sit on the crystal chair and play the harp. Gu Xingyin listened attentively. It was really good. Obviously, the harp had never appeared in the merfolk's classroom. Audrey relied entirely on her own talent to explore. The sound of the harp was still a little stagnant, but Audrey had indeed done very well. When Audrey finished playing, all the merfolk in the classroom gave her applause, including Sophia, who didn't like her. Merfolk were like this. Even if I hate you as a person, I won't deny your accomplishments in certain aspects. Gu Xingyin was also not stingy with her applause. Not to mention Audrey's character, she was indeed accomplished in music. Audrey held her head high, enjoying the praise of others. She glanced around and saw Gu Xingyin, who was applauding with a smile. Her smile suddenly disappeared. According to the rules, when the performance was over, the students had to walk off the stage. But Audrey didn't. She looked at the stage and stared straight at Gu Xingyin. I have always admired your talent in music, Diana. I wonder if you can play a song for us. Audrey thought it through very well. With her own special performance in front of her, the music that she, Diana, played with common instruments, would not be as impressive as her own performance. Gu Xingyin smiled. She didn't intend to do anything. But Audrey dug a hole for her to jump into. If she didn't do as she wished, wouldn't she be letting her down? Sophia's face turned ugly at this time. She stared at Audrey hatefully. This woman, she just thought that her music was very good, and now she took back her evaluation. Those who bullied Diana were not good people. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, it was obviously impossible not to go up. Gu Xingyin stood up. Step by step, she drove the mermaid carriage onto the stage and came to Audrey's side. Audrey hadn't gone down yet. She threw Gu Xingyin a proud look. Gu Xingyin didn't care. Instead, he said, Audrey, your instrument is very beautiful. There was nothing more comforting than a compliment from an opponent. Audrey nodded proudly. My father spent a lot of effort to find a master to make this zither for me. Then, Gu Xingyin spoke again, can I use your musical instrument? Audrey was surprised. What did Diana mean? She didn't believe that Diana could play the harp. Even she herself had to practice for a long time before she could play a complete song. But why was Diana talking like that? Audrey thought to herself. Diana must have said that on purpose. If he said that the harp was not on loan, she might just say that she did not have a musical instrument and not perform. Thinking of this, Audrey smiled at Gu Xingyin, handed the harp over, and said, sure, but Diana, this is an instrument from the ancient Blue Star era. Do you really know how to use it? Gu Xingyin reached out and took the harp in her hand. Her slender fingers gently plucked the strings, and a string of smooth notes flowed from her fingertips. She looked at Audrey with a sweet smile and didn't speak. Seeing her smile, Audrey suddenly had a bad feeling. Chapter 1493. Then she stood aside and watched as Gu Xingyin sat down and gently plucked the strings with her fingers. Gu Xingyin actually doesn't know how to play the harp. But what does that matter? The system knows how to play. Gu Xingyin means that she is almost an all-rounder, and she has the system behind her. If she doesn't know how to play, the system will do it. Gu Xingyin only felt that for a moment, something seemed to be transmitted into her mind. She involuntarily closed her eyes and gently stroked the strings with both hands. This is a piece of divine knowledge of a harp master. Gu Xingyin seemed to faintly hear the system say such a sentence, but she didn't have the mind to care about it. Because at this moment, her mind completely fell on the harp in her hand, and all her chaotic thoughts completely settled down at this moment. As if falling into a wonderful state, everything was still and peaceful, and the only thing that was still moving was Gu Xingyin's hands that were still on the harp. The melodious music flowed slowly in this classroom, and many people closed their eyes in enjoyment. The song was over. Gu Xingyin finally got out of that mysterious state. She put down the harp in her hand and handed it to Audrey, who was still in a daze. "Thank you, Audrey, your harp is very beautiful." Her voice broke the silence in the classroom, and Sophia was the first to recover. She directly said to Gu Xingyin, "Diana, you are really amazing." She stretched out her hands and clapped hard. Influenced by her, the rest of the people also applauded. Originally, they already felt that Audrey's performance was very novel, because it was an instrument they had never seen before. Even if Audrey's performance was not perfect, they felt that she was very good. But no one thought that Diana could play this instrument called the harp so well. The teacher in charge of teaching music to the merfolk directly said to Gu Xingyin, "Diana, maybe you can try to be a musician. The performance just now was simply too beautiful." The teacher even felt that even though she had lived for so many years, her musical attainments were not even comparable to her own students. The moment Audrey heard the applause, her face turned ashen. She had never thought that Diana could play the harp so well, which she had spent so much effort to learn. Was there really such a thing as talent in this world? No, Audrey didn't believe it at all. No matter how talented Diana was, it was impossible for her to play a musical instrument that she had never played before. She must have seen the harp before, but never told anyone about it. If Audrey had known that Diana knew how to play the harp, she would never have shown her talent in the harp. She had originally thought that with this extraordinary appearance, she would be able to successfully leave a classic performance in the hearts of the students. But now, her vision had completely deviated. This lesson had indeed left behind a classic. However, the creator of this classic was not her, Audrey. Just thinking about it made him feel indignant. Instead, Diana took advantage of the situation and showed a big smile to Audrey when she returned the harp. Audrey was very irritated when she saw Diana's smiling face. She angrily snatched the instrument from Gu Xingyin's hand. She returned to her seat with a cold expression. Chapter 1494. Gu Xingyin returned to her seat. Sophia, who was at the side, leaned her head over and praised Gu Xingyin with a smile. "Diana, I really love you to death." Gu Xingyin looked at Sophia helplessly. "She's always able to say things that make me blush." At the end of the class, the merfolk watched the teacher leave very politely. Audrey had been suppressing her anger for a long time. She came in front of Gu Xingyin and asked in a bad tone, "Diana, how do you know how to play the harp?" Gu Xingyin frowned subconsciously. To be honest, no matter how good Audrey's temper was, she couldn't bear it when she was questioned in such a tone. Sophia was already irritated. She raised her eyebrows and sneered rudely, "What? Audrey, our Diana is not a member of your Menlo family. You're really meddling." Audrey didn't pay attention to Sophia. She just looked straight at Gu Xingyin. It seemed that she wouldn't be satisfied if she didn't wait for her answer. Gu Xingyin put away the smile on her face and said to her, "You know, Audrey, I'm always very interested in those paper books that are filled with the traces of time. In this world, optical computers could already meet all the needs of humans. Especially books. For most of the knowledge, humans only needed to scan it directly with an optical computer and transmit it directly into their minds. However, this kind of reading was different from personally studying the book. And those paper books that could already be regarded as cultural relics were just legendary things to the people of the Queso Empire. They were not interested in that, and most people didn't have the ability to get paper books at all. But Diana was different. This girl had an almost instinctive love for paper books. Seeing that his daughter liked them so much, Anderson of the Leonard family naturally paid attention to these. The Leonard family had enough wealth and strength. For the men of the Leonard family, there was nothing in this world that they could or could not get. There were only things that Deanna liked and things that Deanna didn't like. So when Gu Xingyin came to this world, she saw a huge study next to her room. And inside, it was full of precious paper books. This excuse should be enough to shut Audrey's mouth. Gu Xingyin said, "Among the books I collected, there are many about ancient musical instruments. I just happened to see an explanation of the harp." Audrey still didn't believe her. "You only said that you know the harp, but you didn't say that you played it before. There's no more." Gu Xingyin spread out his hands helplessly. "I don't know about that. When I saw the harp that you took out, I felt a sense of familiarity in my heart, and my hands involuntarily placed on it." She smiled happily at Audrey. "Maybe I was a harp musician in my previous life. Who knows? I have to thank you, Audrey, for letting me see a harp that I have never seen before." Audrey's face was ashen. At the side, Sophia's expression had already changed from anger to a snicker. Looking at Audrey's back as she angrily left, Sophia let go of her hand and grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand, smiling at her. "My dear Deanna. How come I never realized that your little mouth could be so infuriating?" Chapter 1495. Audrey had come to question and find fault with Deanna, but it was as if Deanna did not understand what she meant and answered her question very honestly and seriously. But, thinking of Audrey's expression, Sophia laughed out loud. Deanna's serious manner of praising her for her talent in studying was simply too cute. Seeing Sophia like this, Gu Xingyin could only smile helplessly. She looked at Audrey's back from afar outside the classroom and shrugged innocently. She thought to herself, "This has nothing to do with me." Audrey was really going to die from anger. When she returned to her room after school in the afternoon, the anger in her heart had not calmed down. She felt that Deanna had done it on purpose. She had deliberately made her lose face and let others secretly laugh at her. She took out a harp from her storage device. Originally, Audrey liked this harp the most, but now, she wanted to throw it away when she saw it. It was Deanna who had made her lose face so much. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Finally, she could not help but raise the expensive harp and smash it to the ground. The harp fell to the ground and made a huge impact, which woke Audrey up. Looking at the broken harp on the ground, she stared blankly for a while. Finally, she could not help but cover her face and cry out loud. In fact, Audrey had thought too much. The mermaids did not have time to laugh at her. Moreover, for what happened during the day, they would at most sigh that Deanna was really amazing. They would not go so far as to laugh at Audrey. Moreover, this matter was caused by Audrey alone from the beginning to the end. Originally, Gu Xingyin was sitting there in class properly, but Audrey wanted to be in the limelight. It was fine if she wanted to be in the limelight, but she also wanted to see Gu Xingyin make a fool of herself. But was Gu Xingyin the kind of person who would casually let others laugh at her? So, Audrey was slapped in the face. No matter who saw this scene today, there was no way to say that it had anything to do with Deanna. Very soon, this week was over. On the weekend, Sophia went to the Imperial Capital's gene center for the genetic matching. As she had promised Sophia, Gu Xingyin woke up early, tidied herself up, and walked towards the school gate. After greeting Jack's grandfather, Gu Xingyin and Sophia went out. Sophia's family was already waiting at the school gate. Sophia's parents and brother. Gu Xingyin knew them and greeted them one by one. Sophia's family liked their daughter's gentle and well-behaved friend. They were very kind to Gu Xingyin. In the past, Sophia's mother would definitely chat with Deanna when she saw her. But today was different. When Gu Xingyin looked over, she found that the family was obviously a little absent-minded, or rather, nervous. Indeed, the matter that would decide their daughter's life was about to arrive. No parent would be able to remain calm. When they arrived at the gene center, Gu Xingyin was politely asked to wait outside because she was an outsider. She waited outside with Sophia's parents. She watched as Sophia took out her identification card before she followed the staff member who was full of smiles into the building. Gu Xingyin waited for a while and realized that Sophia still hadn't returned. She said goodbye to Sophia's mother and got up to look for the washroom. According to the routine, the male lead appeared. Countdown timer. Please give me a monthly vote. Moi. Chapter 1496. After walking around, Gu Xingyin found that the washroom in this place was really hard to find. She could only helplessly call the system, give me a GPS. Gu Xingyin thought that she was probably the first person to ask the system to do something like this. After coming out of the washroom, Gu Xingyin finished washing up and drove her mermaid scooter outside. The design of this gene matching center led to a long corridor after coming out of the washroom. With the mermaid scooter's normal speed, it would take about 5 minutes to walk. Gu Xingyin slowly walked towards the exit. At the same time, on the other side, 2 people wearing the Empire's military uniform were slowly walking in this direction. The person in the lead had sculpture-like facial features and a cold aura. At this moment, he was frowning, his sharp eyes impatiently listening to the person beside him. Marshal, Madam has already urged you countless times to find time to come here for a gene matching, you. He coldly interrupted the adjutant beside him. Okay, Yashi, we came here today for official business, not for my private life. Adjutant Yashi muttered, if Marshal is willing to spend some time on your private life, I believe the entire empire will be very happy. Raymond raised his eyebrows. He stopped and looked straight at the adjutant with hawk-like eyes. What did you say? The poor adjutant Yashi was silent for a moment under his commanding officer's extremely oppressive aura. In the end, he was defeated and said, Marshal, I didn't say anything. Raymond nodded in satisfaction and continued to walk forward. Yashi followed behind him with a dejected expression. He had been the marshal's adjutant for 3 years. When the marshal was still a general, he had been his adjutant. However, even after following the marshal for so many years, he still couldn't resist the marshal's terrifying aura. Whenever Marshal Raymond was unwilling to do something, he would coldly stare at the other party without saying a word. Under normal circumstances, there were very few people who could resist the marshal's aura. Just like the matter of finding a partner. Madame Raymond had said many times that although the marshal wasn't old, he wasn't young either. He had long reached the age where he should find a partner. But for some reason, Marshal Raymond didn't care at all about the gene matching that so many officers in the military were looking forward to. He even had some resistance. As his adjutant, Yashi wasn't only talked about by the Redmond family, even His Majesty had privately looked for him and asked him to advise Redmond more. Obviously, they all knew that with Sir Raymond's personality, it was impossible to force him. They could only use persuasion and let him take the initiative to do the gene matching. As Marshal Raymond's most trusted adjutant, Yashi carried the hopes of many people on his shoulders. However, Yashi's adjutant, you think I'm too important. If the marshal didn't change his mind, even 100 Yashi wouldn't be able to persuade him to change his decision. Yashi looked up and saw that the marshal had already walked to the front. He came back to his senses and hurriedly quickened his pace to follow behind him. However, Sir Raymond suddenly stopped in his tracks. Chapter 1497. Did something happen? Yashi was confused. He looked ahead with some doubt, but his eyes widened in an instant. Not far in front of the two of them, there was something that was obviously a mermaid's vehicle that was slowly moving in their direction. Yashi's attention was completely attracted by the petite figure. Heavens! How could there be such a delicate and cute little guy in this world? The people of the Empire who had undergone genetic modification were usually taller. In comparison, mermaids were much more petite. That was why Yashi called her a little guy. Yashi looked at the beautiful mermaid slowly walking towards him and felt as if he had been shot by the arrow of the goddess of love. She was really beautiful. Gu Xingyin saw two figures standing in front of her. She looked towards them and saw a very familiar figure at first glance. That man had a tall and straight body. He was wearing the uniform of the Empire's military, with shiny black military boots on his feet, revealing two straight and slender legs. The buttons on his jacket were tightly buttoned to the top. He was obviously a very old-fashioned and serious man. Looking up, it was a handsome face that could make all the mermaids in the Empire go crazy. Of course, the reason why they went crazy wasn't just because this face was handsome, but because this face belonged to Kaja Raymond. When Gu Xingyin looked at him, she found that the other's eyes were also on her body. Those deep and bottomless black eyes were calmly staring at her, without a trace of emotion. So Gu Xingyin changed from secretly looking at him to openly looking at him. She also very generously nodded to Raymond. Then, she saw the baby-faced adjutant behind Raymond. The baby-faced and delicate adjutant was looking at Gu Xingyin in amazement. When he saw Gu Xingyin's gaze, his face turned red. He tried to appear calm and showed a graceful smile to Gu Xingyin. Quite a cute person. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but chuckle when he saw how calm the adjutant was even though he was clearly nervous. She gave a very friendly smile to Yashi's adjutant. Yashi expressed that his heartbeat didn't belong to him anymore. Soon, the cute little mermaid left the place and went to the front hall. Yashi said with an expectant face, "I think I'm favored by the goddess of love." "Marshal, did you see? Such a cute mermaid, why don't you do a genetic match and quickly take one home?" In the Empire, merit points were needed to apply for a mermaid. Yashi didn't have enough merit points, so he could only wait. He liked mermaids very much, so he didn't understand his commander's strange temperament. Raymond didn't say anything. Yashi didn't notice that something was wrong and continued talking to himself, "That little mermaid just now, she's as beautiful as an angel. I bet, she's not an adult yet. Otherwise, those guys from the military would have already. I have to work hard to earn merit points, he. While Yashi was laughing foolishly, Raymond coldly said, "Adjutant Yashi, we're here to work today." Yashi quivered and immediately straightened his expression, "Yes, Marshal." Chapter 1498. The two continued to walk forward, but after a while, Yashi couldn't help but laugh again. "She smiled at me before, did you see that, Sir Marshal? Do you think she likes me too?" Raymond suddenly stopped and said in a deep voice, "Colonel Yashi." Yashi's body trembled. Every time the marshal called him by his rank, it meant nothing good was going to happen. Sure enough, Raymond's next words made his knees go weak. "You have so much free time to think about other things when you're working, double your physical training when you get back." As the marshal's adjutant, not only did he have to be outstanding in all aspects of communication, he also had to be a bodyguard sometimes. Therefore, Yashi never slacked off on his physical training. His training schedule was personally set by the marshal, and in the entire military, it could be considered one of the strictest. Yashi felt that he might not be able to see the moon tomorrow. Raymond's threat was obviously very effective. For a long time, Yashi's head drooped. He didn't recover until he got on the hover car and returned to the military. When he got on the car, he still didn't give up and asked Raymond, "Marshal, you were just joking, right?" Raymond's thin lips lifted. "When have you ever seen me joke?" Yashi, after returning to the military, Raymond sent Yashi away and dialed a number. "I need to find information on a mermaid." "Sir, this is against the rules," Raymond's voice was cold. "Underage, blonde hair, blue eyes, blue tail, went to the genetic matching center today. I need the results before tonight." He didn't wait for the other party to speak and directly cut off the call. After the call ended, Raymond looked out the window and couldn't help but think of the little mermaid he met this afternoon. When he first saw the little mermaid, even if Raymond didn't want to admit it, his eyes couldn't help but follow her from beginning to end. There seemed to be something special about the little mermaid that attracted him. After thinking for a while, he withdrew his gaze and lowered his head to deal with the military matters. Soon, the call rang again. The other party spat out the information he wanted word by word, and at the end, he even attached a thin document. Redmond stared at the front page of the document for a long time. The blonde mermaid was smiling brightly. Deanna. Leonard. Gu Xingyin and Sophia returned to the mermaid school together. When they returned to Sophia's room, she gently tugged on Gu Xingyin's sleeve. Her eyes were filled with excitement. Seeing her like this, Gu Xingyin roughly knew that the result of the genetic match should be what she liked. Sure enough, Sophia looked happy. She quietly moved closer to Gu Xingyin's ear and said, "My match is out. It's Earl Allen. Our genetic match is 89%. Earl Allen was considered a new noble among the nobles of the empire. He was young and promising, and was greatly appreciated by His Majesty. His future could be said to be limitless." Of course, to Sophia, there was one more thing. This Earl Allen had a handsome face that suited her taste very well. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "Congratulations. A match of 89% was considered extremely high in the entire empire. There were almost no accidents. The two of them would be the most compatible and most suitable to become partners." Chapter 1499. Hearing Gu Xingyin's blessings, Sophia was obviously very happy. She rested her cheeks on her hands and looked at Gu Xingyin. "Deanna, you're almost an adult, right?" Gu Xingyin nodded. "I still have 2 months." Sophia's eyes lit up. She looked at Gu Xingyin and seemed to be very excited. "I'm really curious. Deanna, who will be a suitable match for you?" Sophia looked at the simulated starry sky on the roof and said expectantly, "You're the most outstanding mermaid in our batch. You'll definitely find the most outstanding partner." Gu Xingyin laughed softly. She didn't tell Sophia that she had already found that person. Audrey was about the same age as Sophia. Less than a week after Sophia's test, Audrey had also gone to the genetic matching center accompanied by her family. Everyone could see that Audrey was in a very good mood. Even when she saw Gu Xingyin, she didn't show a bad expression. Sophia looked at Audrey with a puzzled expression as she walked over with a charming smile on her face. She seemed to be surprised that Audrey was so easy to talk to today. Gu Xingyin guessed that Audrey probably already knew the results of the genetic matching and knew that her genetic compatibility with Prince Jonathan was 88%. For Audrey, who had always had a crush on Prince Jonathan, nothing could compare to this good news. Sophia also knew that Audrey had gone to the genetic matching center. Seeing her like this, she guessed, could it be that Audrey really likes the person she's matched with? Gu Xingyin didn't want to talk about this kind of thing, so she smiled and said, "Maybe." For the next 2 months, Gu Xingyin's days were rather dull. Just like before, she finished her studies on time every day. During her breaks, she would go out with Sophia and the others and go home to reunite with her family. However, there was one person who saw all of her movements. Raymond didn't know why he would do such a thing. He had only seen the mermaid once, and the two of them had only exchanged a glance. They hadn't even spoken a word. However, ever since he returned, the figure of the mermaid flashed through his mind from time to time. This made him a little upset. Unfortunately, Yashi was not afraid of death. Every few days, he would show up in front of him. It would have been fine if it was just him, but every time, he had to express his longing for the little mermaid that he had only met once and didn't even know her name. Raymond sneered. It must be because the training he gave him was not intense enough. Poor Yashi. In just 2 months, he was living a life worse than death. Even the baby fat on his baby face had disappeared. He knew that his superior was dissatisfied with him in some way, but he was too embarrassed to ask. But no matter how much Yashi thought about it, he would never have thought that the reason he was so miserable for the past 2 months was actually because of his vague desire for the little mermaid whose name he didn't even know. On this day, Redmond's communicator rang. The message sent by the other party made his pupils shrink. Deanna had reached adulthood and would be undergoing genetic adaptation at the Genetic Matching Center in 2 days. Chapter 1500. Marshall, haven't you always had a bad impression of the Genetic Matching Center? The straightforward adjutant Yashi expressed that he didn't understand the marshal's decision to go for an inspection today. Redmond glanced at him lightly, and Yashi immediately shut his mouth. All right, since it was the marshal's decision, he just had to listen to him obediently. Raymond didn't bring many people for this inspection, but when the staff of the Genetic Matching Center heard the news, they treated it as a very serious matter and received it. Then, when Raymond's hover car stopped, it happened to meet Leonard's family, who also stopped at the entrance of the Genetic Matching Center. Raymond's eyes immediately fell on Gu Xingyin. The little mermaid was wearing a light blue dress today. Well, it matched her eyes very well. Raymond silently said in his heart. He also saw Gu Xingyin's snow-white legs outside the dress. Obviously, this little mermaid couldn't wait to try walking with her feet when she could transform her legs. Jason, who was standing beside Gu Xingyin, saw Raymond and his eyes instantly lit up. He looked at Redmond with a burning gaze, and his face was flushed with excitement. After thinking for a while, Jason still couldn't hold back and walked towards Raymond. Yashi immediately stood in front of Raymond to protect him. Although this person seemed to have a close relationship with the little mermaid, the commander's safety must be the first priority. Jason seemed to realize his actions were abrupt. He stopped at a relatively safe distance, and his eyes lit up as he saluted Raymond. Marshal Raymond, I am also a soldier of the Empire. You have always been my idol. Yashi silently looked at Jason's shining eyes. Well, his commander's fans were all over the Empire. It was really troublesome to meet admirers everywhere. Yashi thought that Sir Raymond would ignore this person. Because usually, when faced with this kind of situation, his Sir Marshal would coldly nod and walk away. Then he would leave the poor adjutant to use a smile to comfort the frozen hearts of his admirers. But obviously, this time, Alexei was wrong. Because he saw Sir Raymond stop and greet the young man named Jason. Raymond knew who this man was. Jason Leonard, Deanna Leonard's second brother. Behind him was Leonard and his family. They were probably here today to accompany Deanna in the genetic matching. She said casually, "What are you doing here? Does anyone in the family need a genetic match?" When Jason heard that his idol actually took the initiative to chat with him, he was so excited that he was almost incoherent. He hurriedly nodded, "Yes, Marshal Raymond. My sister, Deanna, is an adult. Today, our whole family is accompanying her for the genetic matching." As he spoke, he turned to look in the direction of Gu Xingyin. When Raymond heard him talk about Deanna, his face was full of pride. Sure enough, as the information said, the little mermaid was a treasure in the hands of the Leonard family. He glanced at her face openly, and then said, "I wish the little girl good luck." Jason's face showed a smile, obviously very happy. "Thank you for your blessing, Sir Marshal. Then, I won't disturb you." He was obviously very good at reading people's expressions, and he could see that Raymond still had something to do. Raymond nodded and didn't look in the direction of Gu Xingyin again. He directly walked through the door under the respectful gaze of the staff. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.